Welcome to the Board of Selectmen special meeting for March 10th. We'll begin, and I invite you to stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, we're going to begin with public audience, and we have a number of people who are joining us live, which is excellent. And I'm going to begin just by reading one email that we received, and this is from Helen Peterson. To the members of the Board of Selectmen, I write to you today in support of the Meadowood acquisition. I've considered your well-developed budget and aware of the pressing issues on your list of capital projects, especially the absolute necessity to update Latimer Lane School. For this reason alone, as shown in your own calculations, it becomes graphically imperative that the Meadowood acquisition becomes compelling for our community. You've heard me cite for you before a report in the 1990s, funded and authored by the Trust for Public Land, no less, called Cows Don't Go to School. In those days, obvious to the name, dairy farms were the target of developments, challenging communities to budget more and more schools, plus all other municipal services. The information proved and posed in that study is still relevant and so important to make wise municipal budget decisions today. I bring this up again also because the budgetary reasons cited were important to acquisition long before climate science taught us what we needed to know as the other compelling reason for conservation, the value of sustaining our very lives on this planet Earth. If careful communicating of information is developed between Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the townspeople, I am certain strong support for Meadowood acquisition will become evident. In this isolation we find ourselves at this time, it is so much more important that this issue be on the referendum. Thank you for the opportunity to comment, and wishing you all well. Respectful, Helen Peterson. And we've got a number of people joining us for public comment in our Zoom meeting. And I wanted to begin, I see Susan Messino, you're here. And Susan, I'll turn it over to you for 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Good evening, everyone. I haven't done this live Board of Selectmen thing before. So I've been a little bit out of the loop related to the budget and other issues. I think a lot of people have been very distracted and trying to just keep things afloat the best they can. So I have no idea what's in the budget. I don't even know what's on the agenda for the meeting tonight. So I'll just be honest about that. But I wanted to make some comments about what I think are common goals that I've seen during the time I've been in town, and also related to my experience as the co-chair of Science and Technology of the Governor's Council on Climate Change. So my perspective on that was not to talk about carbon and greenhouse gases, but to talk about what are the values we have in our communities and how are we going to keep our communities together? What are our community lifelines? What are we offering to the future? And what kind of places for respite and education and kind of a connection to our natural heritage and all the things that we need going forward. It's something for us now, it's something for our children. And one thing that I've often said in town is that I feel like the Farmington Valley has a lot of attributes that we normally ascribe to national parks. We have a lot of beautiful natural areas, we have a lot of cultural resources, historical resources, and so I probably already used 2 minutes, so I'll keep on going very quickly. But I think there might be some opportunities for kind of common sense partnerships to achieve those values. Some things I brought up in the past are, are sidewalks for kids to get to school? Is that something that could be a partnership, for example, between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, or other kind of educational initiatives that might be related to our land? And just because I know I have a limited amount of time, I really want to emphasize what I've come to appreciate related to the Meadowood property is the coalescing of these values of an iconic landscape and historical and cultural values that doesn't exist on other properties in town. And probably you all are aware of how people were very upset when we lost the iconic kind of feeling that people had on Route 10. We're about to possibly lose the iconic quality of the Trap Rock Ridge on Route 44. And I absolutely support all kinds of diversity, equity, affordable housing, all kinds of things. Many of those things have a number of possibilities to be expressed. But when I started thinking about the fact that we have the farm that Martin Luther King worked on in Simsbury with those historic barns, that's the kind of legacy that you can't put anywhere else. It really should qualify for a national monument or national register or something like that. And if we want to make our community more inclusive and more diverse and more welcoming to people, if you're an educator, you know that children who know their history, that is something that predicts future success. How many Black and brown people actually have some place that they can connect their history to? They're not related to Eno Hall or some house with a plaque on it on Simsbury. And the powerful thing that we could do, which is going to not cost us very much between the partnerships that we have, and I think there's even additional opportunities perhaps for the Olmsted 200. I just talked to the national director today. The thing that we can offer as a public space to people that come into our community is you can walk on the land and enjoy that same place and know that Martin Luther King was there. And that is not something we can offer anyplace else. So as I've started to think about this more, I really am very emphatically in support of this purchase. And I think that there's other solutions to the obstacles. This is the only place that has those coalescing of values. And thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. I'll turn next to Lisa Gray. Hi, Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. My name is Lisa Gray, and I'm the founder and director of a Simsbury-based nonprofit called A Promise to Jordan. And I respectfully address the board this evening with regard to our organization's agency grant application submitted for your consideration. Exactly 1 year ago this week, the Board of Selectmen passed a resolution and named our organization its champion for driving the initiative to have the town of Simsbury recognized by the State of Connecticut Alcohol and Drug Policy Council as a recovery-friendly community. This is a recognition extended by the state to those communities who have put forth the effort to meet a list of criteria developed by the state to guide municipalities that are interested in supporting those residents and others who frequent the community who are in recovery from a substance use condition. At that meeting, the Board of Selectmen committed to assisting in these efforts through the Department of Community and Social Services. Since that time, despite the hardships imposed by the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic, A Promise to Jordan has taken on the sole responsibility and made great strides toward this achievement. And I'm pleased to report to you this evening that we've been able to meet 13 of the 24 criteria laid out by the state so far. I'm very proud of that. But in order to meet the remaining 11 criteria and be recognized as a recovery-friendly community, we need your help. We are a small nonprofit with one staff person, you're looking at her, and limited financial resources. We're very pleased to be leading this initiative, but the recognition will ultimately be given to the town of Simsbury, not A Promise to Jordan. Since 2012, our small community has lost at least 17 of its residents or former residents to an accidental overdose. We just lost another one last week. This number doesn't take into account the number of alcoholics who have died from complications related to their disease or individuals who have intentionally taken their own lives as a direct result of their substance use disorder because they saw no other way out. In the past year, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a tremendous toll on those with substance use and mental health disorders. The number of accidental overdose deaths in the state of Connecticut in 2020 is expected to be over 1,500, a 25% increase over 2019, which was the worst year ever on record. Services and support are needed now to help people get into and stay in recovery. In recent months, the town seems very focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is great, but diversity, equity, and inclusion don't just apply to race and sexual orientation. They also apply to people with disabilities, and the disease of addiction is considered a disability by the Americans with Disabilities Act. If the town of Simsbury wants to be known as a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community, It must be sensitive to and serving the needs of all its citizens, not just a select few. If recognized as recovery friendly, the town of Simsbury will be only the 4th community in the state of Connecticut to achieve such recognition. This achievement would showcase Simsbury as a forward-thinking, progressive community which embraces all of its citizens and supports them in their wellness. Like all good things worth having in life, this achievement does not come without cost, and A Promise to Jordan cannot proceed with the efforts toward this recognition without your help. Therefore, I respectfully request that you approve our grant request, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Mhm.
I'm going to turn to Dave Bush. Hi, Dave.
Hey, good evening, all. It's been so long since Saturday. I want to first of all thank all the Board of Selectmen. You folks put in a really marathon session on Saturday, and this budget truly reflects your consideration and your thorough review. So I am going to direct my comments, though, directly to the budget. And you might imagine that Dave Bush, for Catherine Lane, sorry, I got to put that on a record, chairman of Park and Rec, I advocate for certain things associated with what I volunteer with. So first and foremost, you guys heard from Tom Taberski about the parks and facility maintenance technician. Over the last approximately 10 years, we lost 30% of our staff due to budget cuts, and we are looking to have an addition now of the parks and facility maintenance technician. This is absolutely necessary. Anyone who does business that involves preventative maintenance, they understand that if you do not take care of things and you fix them as they break, it costs you far more money. And this new position will start to help alleviate one of those problems, because he now will then at least be adding to our staff where we've had not less than 10 distinct parks, projects, or locations, including the Performing Arts Center, Curtis Park, 3 fields, the Town Forest Ball Field, Memorial Field expanded by 2 parks, Rails to Trails and Ethel Walker Woods added to our requirements for our staff. And therefore, we really do need this additional position. I understand this position competes with other needs, such as the police or the police commission's office. But the fact of the matter is that this position, without it, the town is going to see a decline in services and, frankly, an increase in costs. Secondly, I'd like to advocate for the parks and maintenance staff training and professional development. It's all of $2,500. That will help make sure that we have people properly certified, critical on pesticides, on licenses, and on safety inspections of playground equipment. So we would advocate for that as well. Next, the CNR request, the capital non-recurring, is both modest and reasonable this year. We lost our biggest project. We lost our irrigation project that's been on for 7 years on the capital non-recurring budget because of Meadowood. And I'll speak in a moment about that. But the rest of our requests are necessary. In particular, the ice chiller, part of a 3-phase plan, the playscape replacement. As many of you know, I'm an attorney. You guys got a safety issue up there that you cannot ignore because your insurance rates are going to go up if you don't take care of business. That has got to be dealt with. And we have equipment that in Tom's presentation on Saturday, if any of us was driving a truck from 1990 with 284,000 miles on it, we would be considered ridiculous in the town of Simsbury, which is the equivalent of our parks mower. Also, there are clubhouse repairs that need to be made at the golf course. We are lucky. We have now just brought in a new vendor. That vendor is going to bring in new business. We need to support them. Finally, I understand that we've deferred maintenance, but I am a member of Open Space. I am going to advocate that Meadowood is a once-in-a-lifetime, just as Ethel Walker Woods, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we need to make sure we allocate the dollars. I'm disappointed that I personally feel that some of those dollars came from the Park and Rec budget, and they shouldn't, because it's a town-wide project. It is not a Park and Rec budget. It's an open space budget item. But the fact of the matter is, if you looked at Maria's analysis, the cost per acre is extraordinarily low. I support the purchase of that. And I thank you all once again. You have spent a ton amount of time. Let's hope that we can get through COVID and get to see each other in person in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you again. And I'll turn next to Morgan Hilliard from the Chamber. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the call. I haven't had the opportunity to participate in this meeting before, and so I wanted to just take a moment to speak to all of you about a little bit about the Chamber and what we've focused on for this past year regarding tourism and sort of looking at what we've done from a tourism perspective. As all of you know, we've settled in our new beautiful office in the center of Simsbury. And we receive a lot of visitors, depending, of course, on the weather, that stop in to learn about the town of Simsbury. We're seeing visitors from all over, which is to be expected. You know, people have a plan in mind. They're either visiting a specific attraction or a family, so they stop by the visitor center to see what else we have going on. But I've also noticed that we get a lot of residents. So most of them are newly relocated residents. We're seeing a lot of people moving to town from the cities. And I think all of the realtors can speak to that right now. But we're also seeing a lot of longtime residents stop in that, you know, weren't aware that there was a visitor center and wanted more information about the businesses in the area, the other tourism opportunities. And so it's fascinating to start meeting some of these people and hearing that they've been in the area for, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they want to know more about Simsbury because they haven't been taking advantage of it. So just a little bit about what we have at the visitor center. We have marketing for local businesses, brochures for Simsbury tourism that Simsbury Main Street Partnership has developed, as well as brochures talking about surrounding areas. So again, I mentioned if someone's coming and Simsbury is just one stop of many, we're kind of one-stop shop for them because they can come in and grab information about all sorts of areas that we're connected with. We have a variety of business directories and the Chamber Community Guide. So we've added this past year about 15 pages to this guide. Before it was a great piece for the Chamber members in terms of getting them some visibility and advertising, but it was very much designed like a directory. We've really built on that directory to be a comprehensive guide now. So it includes information straight from Simsbury Main Street Partnership and the pieces they've developed. It includes information about the Business Resource Center and the public library and all sorts of other attractions that we have in the area. So it's not chamber specific. It really does advocate for the whole area. We're really focused on the shop local component of tourism. Obviously, we're a business centered organization. So we really want to promote shop local. And right now we're working on something with the Simsbury Main Street Partnership, the Say Yes to Local campaign. So everyone that's been coming in lately, we're talking, that opportunity up to them. We're directing them to the website where they can see a list of restaurants and businesses and those businesses that are really struggling right now and are in need of some online sales or gift certificates, things of that nature. So we're really have our finger on the pulse of the business community, and I think the contact with these visitors really helps with that. Just a little bit about some of the community events that we've been working on. So the events are obviously very chamber driven, but we also have a lot of events that are used to bring in visitors for the community and engage the community at large. So the art trail, we hosted our second art trail, and this year was even more successful than the first. We had over 30,000 people come to the area from all over the place. It was really fascinating to hear how these people have found out about Simsbury and decided to visit us because of the sculptures that we had in place. So that was fantastic for local tourism. And these people didn't just, stop by a day to see a handful of sculptures. They were staying at the places that we had available for hotels and inns. They were eating at our restaurants and shopping at our businesses. So especially during COVID, that was one of the few things you could do. And I think it was really amazing for Simsbury as a town. We also have two other events that we had this past year that were pretty unique. So of course, everyone's familiar with the chili challenge, but this year that's not possible with COVID. So we sort of took this spectacular theme and modified it to be a more family-friendly event We had it over at the Performing Arts Center. It was hugely successful. We had about 1,500 people, which was the max we were allowed with COVID at the time, and food trucks and entertainment and games. So just the feedback was, through the roof. People had a tremendous amount of fun there. So that's an event we can continue to build on, and that will draw people from, out of the area once we're allowed to, extend how many people can come to that. And then Simsbury Lights the Night is another event that I wanted to bring up. So that was an event this is the first time we've presented that. And it was an idea that our Simsbury residents came up with. And the chamber saw that on Facebook, and we thought it was a fantastic way to engage the community when people weren't able to visit family and friends as much as usual. So we thought, why not hop on this bandwagon and make it an even bigger event and get the community, the residents, and the businesses together to decorate our locations for the holidays. And what it ended up doing was attracting people from all over to visit our residential areas and our businesses. So that's an event we're going to continue to build upon. So I just want to thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm looking forward to continuing to support tourism for Simsbury through the visitor center and events, and coming up with new innovative ways to engage the community. Thank you so much.
Hey, Morgan, thank you so much for the update. It's so good to see the participation tonight in public audience. I wanted to see if there was anyone else who wanted to speak as part of public audience tonight. Okay. All right. We have basically one agenda item, and that is to continue our work on the upcoming budget. And I was going to propose we basically tackle the next steps in 4 different chunks. Starting with a discussion on the pension changes. Amy has a really neat spreadsheet she can share with various options that we can discuss and build in. Then wrap up our operating budget, discuss the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, and then discuss CNR. Before we begin with pension changes from the board, is there any questions, feedback, thoughts? Okay. Well, Amy, I did get a preview of the document you put together, which really nicely lays out some options that we could discuss. So would you mind sharing that with us?
Sure.
Eric, I did have just one point while Amy was bringing that up.
Yeah, sure.
In that I agree we should have this conversation, but I believe I heard it correctly that the Board of Ed did not address the pension side because the Board of Finance was going to do that. So I don't think we need to spend hours on this tonight.
Agreed.
We should coalesce around a recommendation and move forward. But I believe that guidance is true for us as well. I mean, we're not supposed to ignore it, but we should have a recommendation, but we don't have to go hours and thousands of feet deep on this. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is basically each different pension scenario that we went through last night at the Board of Finance meeting. So this is the impact for no changes. We keep everything status quo. This is if we do the change in asset performance, the updated mortality tables as they currently are at the 13-year amortization. If we do half the mortality tables, if we do the mortality tables with the 15-year amortization, 17-year amortization, 20-year amortization, and then this is the 13-year amortization mortality tables at 6,625, and then the same thing at 6.5. And then this is just your impact over here on your mill rate, your median home, and then the general fund.
And Eric, if I could just quickly jump in, and I really want to thank Amy for her work on this today. It's amazing. I don't know how she pulled it off today, but thank you so much. I think this lays everything out very nicely. I did just want to point out, I think that there may have been, without all of this information, some consensus may be forming if we were to do the 13-year amortization period. Perhaps this board would recommend doing half of the updated mortality table, right? There was quite a bit of conversation on Monday night. So if you still wanted to stick with that option, that is column I for you.
Question or statement, Amy. If I'm correct, we talked about lots of different people's inputs the other night, Monday night. But I believe I heard the advisors, the consultants' guidance was if you were going to do anything, their preference as it relates to not only the health of the plan, but also how it is looked at by outside agencies, it was to address the mortality first. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
Okay, so it's hard for me to do anything other than what that group tells us to do. Okay, that's just I'm gonna stay that for the group.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we heard last night again, the actuary that presented last night said that, right? And then followed it on with that there didn't appear to be any concern from her standpoint to continue to work with us and certify these numbers if we updated the amortization schedule to 20 as well. If we talked about going beyond that, there started to be concerns, but it was affirmed last night as we thought we knew on Monday, right? But it was affirmed by the actuary last night that 15, 17, 20 was not abnormal at all.
I watched the presentation last night. My preference would be either column Q or column O, which would be the 17-year or 20-year.
Yep.
Certainly, we wouldn't want to go beyond 20-year. And I think a reasonable place to land could be 17 years, given where we are today, being at 13, splitting the difference. At the end of the day, though, the Board of Finance is going to land where their comfort level is.
I agree with Richard.
Sorry, Chris.
No, I agree because that accomplishes what accomplishes what a professional who we charge with that responsibility, that accomplishes their number one guidance, and also advises us on the options of the amortization and says, yes, those are not ways to solve for a problem that you don't want to face. That's actually a way that I would comfortably advise you to utilize that plan. So yeah. I think that's fair.
So I want to see if the group would feel comfortable, for the assumptions that we're building into our budget, going with what's in column Q, which is the updated mortality table in the 20-year, which would have no impact on the mill rate. And then the Board of Finance can have their conversation and see if they wanted to be more aggressive than that.
I would like to see, I like the idea of Q, but I would also like to consider O, just because it's less of an amortization period.
I'm with Wendy.
I actually, go ahead, Eric. I apologize.
No, please. I was just going to repeat something I said before, which is useless. So go ahead.
And not at all. I would be in favor of going with the Q. It ultimately does come down to our consultant's recommendation and the Board of Finance. So we're basically moving ourselves forward from my perspective and having minimal impact on the budget.
Thanks, Mike.
So, Eric?
Go ahead, Jackie.
If we went with the no impact to our mill rate.
Wow.
Not me.
Mike, you're volunteering for the fire department as well? Or is that EMS?
Okay, Eric, I'm going to continue my question for you.
Go ahead, Jackie.
If we go with no impact to the mill rate, and then Board of Finance comes back and says, no, we would prefer you do the 17-year or something else, how does that affect our budget? Or how do we put that back in our budget? Do you know what I mean?
I can take that if you want, Eric.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
So basically, you're going to pick whatever you're comfortable with. Like Sean said, at the end of the day, the Board of Finance is going to choose what pension assumption they want to go with. So you pick what you're comfortable putting forward. And then if the Board of Finance doesn't like it, when it becomes their budget, they just change it.
Yeah, I mean, they have line item authority, so that's how this process works. It's no different than Maria has a budget, she gives it to us, and then it becomes ours and we change it, right?
Right.
And then we give it to them and they change it, and then the voters affirm it or don't. So, yeah.
Hey, Amy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Wendy. You were
I
waiting.
just have a question for Amy. So let's just go with, let's say column O, right? So, and then we're going to need a plan for the next few years, how we're going to implement the interest rate, right? So if we do it, and last night, I guess she was saying 6.25 or something. We were just shooting originally for 6.5. So over the next, say, 2 years, we move each year closer to the target interest rate. There's going to be a pretty heavy hit, I think, on the taxes each of those years, correct?
I mean, there will be an impact. I'm not sure of the impact. So here you can see that the biggest impact is with the updated mortality tables, and then the interest rate assumption is a little less of an impact. So you can do like the in between rates. So here we have like 6.625 and then 6.5. If you want to start going with a different amortization table, then our actuaries are actually going to have to redo this chart that's here, because the 6.625 and the 6.5 are based on the original 13-year amortization. So if you all start with that column O, like you were talking about, then the 6.625 and the 6.5 interest rate assumptions change based on the 17 years, and they actually will come down because it's a lower amortization.
Okay.
But I don't know what those numbers look like.
Okay, but at less than 86 minus whatever. Yeah. Okay. But just in general, the next few years, we're going to get hit with this every year. We're going to have to allocate a certain amount for pension.
Right.
Okay.
We'll be having this conversation next year.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the year after too.
Yeah.
And then they'll change the guidance to 6 and we'll start chasing that number, right? I mean, again, going back to my weatherman comment, they said it was going to be 55 today and it was 58. They're never right, but they're never wrong. So and she admitted that they change the target on us every year because they redo the numbers. She said, it's 6.25. It could be 6.1 next year. Could be back up to 6.3. So we shouldn't, I guess my point is we should steadily make intelligent decisions and not feel pressure that we're doing anything wrong, to have a plan to get to a solid, a continued solid funding place. We are adequately funded at this point from a cash flow standpoint. We meet our obligations. The plan is not insolvent. The plan is not in danger of going insolvent. So that's important to remember here. It's when and how do we want to pay for this? And I disagree with the 30-year mortgage argument last night. Is in a mortgage at the end of 30 years, you actually have something and no debt. In a pension plan, you continue to have liabilities, even if you make the right payment for 30 years, because it's an imperfect science and the assumptions and the production all changes. So it's not the same thing as where you walk away 30 years debt free. So I think we could spend hours on this. And it is a worthwhile conversation, but I think we have consensus, Eric, that we need to do the mortality tables based on that's the most prudent step that's everybody's recommended. And again, I'm comfortable with pushing the 20-year amortization at this point, and then leaving it to the Board of Finance. I agree we should be on a path to get down to 6.5 or 6.25 if that's the new shiny object for us. And I'm not averse to doing it this year. And maybe that's the answer, but we would need an updated number on that 6.625, because essentially it's a zero impact to the general fund if we went with column Q, and then there's presumably $100,000 or $200,000 of impact moving to column S once the actuaries do the new calculation, right, Amy?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. So what I'm going to recommend for tonight is that we go with the 20-year. I heard 4 people express support for that, and no doubt this will be a conversation next Tuesday when we meet with the Board of Finance. Does that sound okay to people?
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine. And my apologies for that alarm going off. It was a storm warning. It was not me stroking out.
Okay, good to know.
Everything all right, Mike? No need to get shelter?
No, I'm already sheltered.
There you go.
All right. Let's move on to the decisions that we were talking about at the end of our last meeting on Monday around our operating budget.
So I requested that Eric start with the pension because that is the hardest thing to change in my worksheets because it impacts multiple tabs. So now that you all have picked the mortality tables with the 20-year amortization, I actually have this levy calc ready to go based on what you guys discussed on Monday. So I added in the $22,000 for the Spirit Council. I added in the $2,000 for the Meals on Wheels, which we did get confirmation from the trustees of the Darling Trust that it is okay to use Darling Trust funds to pay for that increase. I put in the following service improvements: the Parks and Rec technician, the police officer, the assessor temp position, the Parks and Rec professional development, the police de-escalation training, and the library materials. And then I also increased it by $25,000 to reflect the current decrease that is in the registrar's budget. So let me know if I missed something, and if not, then you are free to start telling me what changes you want.
Real quick, Amy, this is great. Can you just scroll down and just see where we're starting?
Yeah.
The mill
Oh,
rate
yes.
perspective?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I wanted to open it up for thoughts from the board on any items that you'd propose removing.
Can you just scroll down again because I missed what the amounts?
It was 70.
Okay. And does this include like the debt service level of 7 or 8?
No.
Just as so it's still at 6 point whatever.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that won't change because we haven't bonded yet.
Yeah.
Right, not for this year.
Not
Yeah,
for-
I'm sorry, for this year, but for next
I
year.
think what you're asking, I think what you keep on asking or is, we're not yet considering a budget that includes any CIP, any new CIP, Wendy.
Right.
That's what I mean, so this is
Yes.
just, again, the operating plus service enhancements. It's not Meadowwood, it's not Latimer, which are two things. That's the next, that's what makes this uglier. This is what our baseline is.
Yeah, like exactly, Chris. Thank you. I can look at this and maybe, but I'm thinking next year it's gonna go up. The pension, the year after, whatever.
Yes.
So one thing I was just, after listening to Lisa, and I was just proposed this because she did remind me that we're trying to be a recovery friendly community, and that's a designation we're pushing for, along with our diversity and inclusion pushes. If there was any way we could take some of the Spirit Council funding and potentially fund, one of her asks was $3,000 for a website. Just throwing that out there, just to kind of be fair to all.
Wendy, I'm glad you said that because I'm of the same mind, only because, and I think that we have to be careful about these designations. And again, people can come at me later on. I'm trying to talk about this from a process standpoint, right? So what we did was we thoughtfully went through Lisa's plan for the mission that she wants to help us go on. And then we committed to it, right? And she said it in the presentation. But we don't know, we don't know what that commitment means. But now she made a statement that we made a commitment. Now, whether it's one person and who knows how long the Promise for Jordan's going to be around, I'm not talking about that. But then we did the same thing with the Spirit Council. And I've had conversations with a number of you folks, and you've said we've made a commitment to them. And I said, it's not a commitment at all costs. It's putting aside the efforts of the Spirit Council. We have to be careful with our words. I'm the biggest. I'm the one who falls in probably the deepest holes with my words, and I don't think of them too often. But this is an example of where we need to think about what we committed to, right? And how many more, not that they're good or bad, but Lisa brought up a good point earlier. And I'm of the mindset to say, you know what? The Spirit Council's asked for $22,000. I don't know what that $22,000 represents. It represents a couple of ideas, but I really don't know what the firm deliverable and cost associated with branding. Maybe they could get a volunteer, they could do a contest. It's an amazing organization that does amazing work. But can they take 22 and can we give 3 to, could they take 19 and we can give 3 Lisa? Because we said what we said. And it's less about them. It's more about, we got to think about what we're saying in the future to some of these organizations.
Yeah. So Chris, to your point, that's why Eric and I got so involved with the declaration of a public health crisis with respects to racism for exactly that reason. And Eric, I think you and I both said it at least 20 times in meeting with the subcommittees on that, right? Is we're not going to put our name on something that we're not going to follow through with all the way. And that includes the funding. So I agree. Chris, you've heard me give sermon after sermon on grants, on free money from the state. We say yes to stuff, and then we forget 6 and 12 months later, there's a check that comes due that we got to pay so somebody can cash it. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. And it's hard because, as a political legislative body, you don't say no to good causes, right? But then it comes down to the tough decision making, and you have to put the dollars behind whatever proclamation you issued 6 months earlier. I don't think we should take from one place that we supported to give to another, though, to be honest with you, because now we're pitting organizations against each other, which we're the ones that committed, not the Spirit Council and not Promise to Jordan. So, and it respects the money that the Spirit Council asked for. Probably one of the most backed up community requests outside of Main Street, right, Maria? I mean, the support that went with that. They met with another community. They were given advice on what the smartest place to spend money would be. It's on furthering the message. And again, it's not branding in the sense of EDC branding. It's branding in the sense of Spirit Council's charge is driving difficult conversations in a community that's not used to having them to the surface, and bringing people to the table that don't often come to the table to solve problems and speak their ideas. And that's not free and easy. It's a bit of a different endeavor than I think we've gone down versus we hang a banner on Iron Horse and invite people to an event. Yeah. So I think that number with the data collection, again, because we demand results, and I myself have demanded numbers and backup on 3 or 4 different places in this budget. And as Spirit develops, we're going to demand the same out of them for the next set of spend, the next initiative. And if we don't allow them to set the baseline, they can never meet the obligation of, are they improving? Are they making a difference? Are they, enacting change? So we can put that off, but again, then we're putting off their ability to prove that change is happening. So we need to be careful with that. Sorry, Eric.
No, that's okay.
If I could just quickly add on the Spirit Council request, you may recall that they did actually come in with a lower request, but again, just from feedback that Melissa and I were hearing from some of our counterparts, we thought that 25, it still may be a little tight for the budget, but in order to probably really get the work fully done based on some RFPs that were coming back from other communities, we thought 25 in totality was probably a good target. And you may recall the Board of Finance gave them a bit of seed money just a few weeks back. So that's where the 22 came from. And I don't know if Melissa, if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
No, I would just agree. I think we've definitely had a lot of conversation about this, at the Farmington Valley Collaborative with other surrounding communities, like Maria said, that are doing the work. And, if we're going to do it, we want to make sure we're doing it the right way. And it looks like that's the level of investment that's kind of required.
I guess I'll restate, Sean, I'm putting options out there, but I'm putting conversation. Again, as I started and didn't eloquently say it, because I said my words get me in trouble. We need to think about our process, because if I don't necessarily think that when I initially thought and heard and educated and bought into the Spirit Council and or the Promise to Jordan and or whatever, that a dollar number comes with it. And I've got to remember that now, seemingly going forward, that if when we do these levels of endorsement,
Yep.
it's almost potentially the lens of which every single one of them I've got to consider.
Yep.
Not the value of the mission,
Right.
because the return that comes from the mission, the return that Lisa can provide, if you looked at that from a hard asset that you'd have to pay for, and the return I got from what the Spirit Council can provide to us as humanistic standpoint, if that was to a cost, it's not even conceptually it's conceivable.
Right.
So the question is not about what they do. It's just that we need to, because we're going to, this is that $2,500 or $6? Does that mean at some point we don't get the children's books? We got to think about that kind of stuff. So I'm just thinking.
I agree. Yeah, buddy. I mean, the one thing I've learned in a decade is any presentation and anytime we're asked to sign something, there's always money somewhere down the road tied with it, whether it's a grant, it's an idea. And again, that's not a bad thing. That's what we're here for. We are a funding source as a taxing authority and as a community that can drive projects, right? And we're a powerful vehicle. And again, it's important that we continue to embrace that. But you're right, the gravity of the decision is from a financial standpoint is sometimes lost in the moment of the mission. And that's, I mean, again, I've done the same thing. So
as I'm listening to this conversation, I'm drawing a distinction between an outside agency and an organization like the Spirit Council. I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but we, the six of us, are the board of directors of the Spirit Council. They report to us. So when we give them money for a specific reason, to me, that's different than giving money to an outside nonprofit organization. When we had the presentation on the recovery-friendly community, I did not recall a dollar amount being connected to that, although we always know that there could be financial needs. My level of comfort is if there are financial needs, I would rather that come through the social services budget than through a nonprofit organization, again, because of the level of control over how that money is used. That's my perspective. So this is not a hill I'm going to die on. These are not, other than the Spirit request, these are not large dollar amounts. But my opinion is to keep the Spirit Council at the level that we've been discussing, and to keep outside agency funding at the level that we discussed at our previous meeting. Okay. Again, others are free to disagree here. I also wanted to get the thoughts of the board on one other topic. At our last meeting, we had some robust conversation about the addition of a police officer, and the police officer, salary and benefits at $142,000 is almost as large as all of the other requests, service enhancements combined. I have no doubt that we're going to be expanding our police force in the years to come as the needs of our community continue to evolve. But since that position has not been full of this budget, my recommendation would be to remove it from this budget and pick up that conversation next year, assuming that's a priority of the police department, police commission, and town manager.
I'm in support of that, Eric, and I'll give you a couple. So I wanted to know if you talked about moving to this part of the project to solve for. Was it about adds and deletes, so to speak, from the blue column? And I'm in favor of removing the police officer for a couple of reasons, and it has nothing to do with, there's nobody more thankful, and well, maybe the teachers, but it's hard pressed to think who I think of more deeply when it comes to my children than the police in this town. But what I want from I've mentioned the other night, I'll try to make this quick, Sean. What I want from the town moving forward is I want to I want a human capital plan, just like we have for like we put forward for planning for buildings, for durable goods. We need to get on human capital. Number one, before I approve any new drop-ins, or comfortable and approve it. It's just to understand, right? The second thing of why around the police is that it seemingly is it's competing with the Parks and Rec tech, and that's something that I don't think we can go without, considering that it was a removal. They're not working with open complements. They're working with lost complements with growth. With respect to the chief's presentation, right, Mike's and Jenna, which they're experts, what really illuminated is that we talk about budgeting for the build, and that when that build comes, it will be so much harder to do the things that we're not doing right now. And that was part of the tone and tone of what I heard, the things that we're not doing right now. That's the things that we're not doing right now are independent, in my eyes, of building a force for the build out that's to come. Most of the reasons why that's my infantile mind or my basic mind, most of the things we're not being able to do right now is because we don't have a full police department for the budgeted positions that we have. So I'm not comfortable adding a body to the police department without a capital plan, human capital plan across all departments. And I'm not comfortable if a townsperson hears from us that there's, unless I'm misunderstanding, that there are open complements right now, that's where the service that's not being done should come from, not the person that we have yet to need. So that's kind of where I am with the police officer.
Other thoughts? Thanks, Chris.
I can just jump on the comment. So, Chris, I appreciate where you're coming from, but I do respectfully disagree in that there is a need for the police officers today. The development, the apartments has already happened. The population growth has already occurred, and it will continue. So, the request is 4, I believe. This is just one of the 4 over the time period, and we can all opine on when that might be needed. And maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, maybe it is the 4. But I think the need is here. And when I hear things like, and we were all joking around about it, that, none of us have gotten pulled over because there's no one doing traffic. Well, that means that something's not getting done. And that's pretty important to me from a safety standpoint. And again, we all appreciate that, you don't get ticketed, but at the same time, does that mean that driver behavior is changing and that our streets are potentially, again, I want to be very careful here, our streets are safe, but are they on the verge of not being as safe as we want them to be because we don't have an officer out there doing regular traffic enforcement? That to me, again, when I hear that, it's not me saying that I don't view the maintenance and the preventative maintenance as important. I absolutely do. I don't want equipment to break and downtime and more, more capital costs. But again, as I hear those two arguments, I do prioritize a patrol officer on the road ahead of preventative maintenance for the Parks Department. And that's where I'm at, and again, as you know, with any organization, there is turnover, there are open positions, and the chief needs 39 sworn officers and he has 36. And if we give him 40 spots, do we get him up to 37 or 38 sworn officers, which tackles the problem? We're not just going to magically approve a position and boom, we're going to get 4 candidates. But does it get him closer to a full complement so that he can offer the full complement of policing that this community expects? And I know there's going to be an opportunity to have that discussion outside of the budget, et cetera. But I very much am in favor of the police officer staying at this point.
Eric, this is Mike. Circling back to the promise for Jordan, I would suggest that we not include that in our budget, but that at the end of the year transfers, we do something with our social services to assist them with the website that they're looking for and see if we can't leverage some of our expertise. I had a problem with my computer, so I couldn't jump in when you guys were at that point. I apologize, but at least I didn't interrupt everybody with another alarm. I am also in favor of the police officer. I think we've already headed down this path, and we need to I like Chris's idea a great deal about human capital and coming up with a plan so that we build this into our operating plan going forward. But we already are there, and I think we need to address that now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Maybe Chris or Eric, just because we could potentially debate this all the way up until the Board of Finance and then some. So perhaps just to move us forward, I'm going to call the question on the police officer, and then I vote to formally move that we add the police officer to the operating budget for the 142,342 as stated on the worksheet.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion fails with a 3-3 vote.
Okay. Now we can move on.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, no, it's nothing personal, guys, but this is what we do, right? We have to make a decision and then we move on. Yep.
I know. What I'm responding to is we get to move on. That's what I like. We actually took action. We actually took action on something and we're moving on. And it's not. It's not pleasant or easy or comfortable.
In the spirit of moving on, Eric, and I know this is not going to be, popular vote, but I guess I'm looking at all of these things, the blue items that were not in our budget. So the Meals on Wheels is going to be paid for by the Darling Trust, won't affect the mill rate, if that's correct. The assessor temp position is going to basically fund itself.
Correct.
I would like to see the budget I would like to see all of these, the blue items taken out so we can see what our mill rate would be.
Is that something that you can quickly do, Amy?
And
Or
I'm sorry, Amy.
maybe not so quickly?
No, I can. No, that's all right.
Oh, Amy, should we have them take a look at the mill rate with the officer out?
That'd be helpful.
Yeah,
sure.
Before we make all the changes? Okay.
Oh, sorry, Maria. Thank
No,
you.
it's okay.
We're
It's
not
okay. I
seeing
just
the
thought we should do
bottom.
that before she starts making the changes.
Okay,
That's good call.
$58 for the median home. Okay.
And our starting point was 36, right?
But that didn't include the pension at all.
Right.
Correct.
So it was 70. We took out the police officer. Now it's down to.
Right. But our pension recommendation also wouldn't impact the mill rate in this case.
Oh.
Going to take out Spirit, take out Registrar. And then we are going to take out. Oh, that's in 2,500. Goes down to $37.29 or $44.
So we're talking, just doing some quick math, about $12 by adding those additional positions in.
Taking them out. Well, yeah.
Right. But if we go back to.
Yes, it'll be $12. You're right.
Okay. In looking at this, what are people's thoughts?
Well, $12 is the difference with adding a position and the training and all of that. That's the difference.
It looks like it's 0.07 mils.
It's $2 a month. No.
About
It's $1 a month.
dollar and some change.
Yeah, it's less than $2.
So wait, you took out everything in number 3? Just to,
So everything except for the assessor position, because that pays for
Yeah.
itself. I took out the Spirit Council, and then I took out the 25,000 to keep the registrar flat.
And you took out the parks position?
Yes.
And I took out the parks position.
Okay.
The big move here, guys, it's again, it's the human capital is what's driving.
Yeah.
Human capital is the cost of the mill rate.
Yeah. My personal opinion, given this $12 difference, the parks position helps to maintain these incredible assets that we have. The Spirit Council money is allowing us to build upon the work that we committed to in this resolution. And I think my opinion is that we include these items.
Yeah.
You guys,
So-
we just voted no on a police officer for not much more money than that, and now we're willing to put it all in.
Well, here's my thought. My thought is that we're doing this stage, and we're doing, in my mind, again, it's almost if it's a human capital plan. The Parks and Rec is solving something that's different than the police department. But I would argue it is solving a safety issue. And Dave wasn't just practicing for his next and his next radio show advertisement as a lawyer, trying to scare time. There's a safety issue that goes along with this, and we have, that is something I take seriously that brings into the fold. So we have a deficit. We've lost the positions. We're getting a technician, which comes to the much higher level than what is perceived to be the general asset that goes into Parks and Rec. It's going to help us with safety. It was something that we were this close with last year, and it's been asked for repeatedly, and we voted them down. It's the same thing like we talked about why we didn't move the pension, the interest number last year. We said we'd address it this year. So this is me talking about a plan. I'm asking for the Parks and Rec tech this year because we kicked it out last year. I think it fills a position. It fills a complement that was taken away rather than additive. It offers safety, and it's part of a plan. And then you have my commitment, and though I know I was warned to never do this, but my commitment is with a plan. Now I understand more about the police needs and growth with the Parks and Rec master space, with all the land that the projects and space that we've acquired over the last 10 years. That's why I believe that we have the human capital plan that justifies that. Next year, I'm full in support of adding the police officer in, but it's graded so that the townspeople don't get hit with a significant, and allows us latitude elsewhere. I'll stop there.
well, I would just make a point, Sean, like before you didn't want to compete the funds for the agencies. So I don't think we should compete the police officer versus the Parks and Rec tech, because they're really two different functions and two different needs. And so I don't think that's a valid way to look at it.
I mean, your argument is that it's only $12, not that it's a need. So if you're saying it's a need, that's different. But what I heard is that it's only $12. So what's the big deal?
That's not the way, that wasn't the intention of what I was saying. I'm in this budget, staff clearly laid out the need for this Parks and Rec tech. And last year, they clearly laid out a need for a deputy chief, which we funded. If they clearly lay out a need for one or more police officers, I'd give that full consideration.
And I guess that's where we differ. I mean, the police commission, I think, did, and I know it didn't make it into the budget, but that need from the police commission's discussion was established.
But there was no data provided other than the comparison per capita, which isn't influential with me.
Right. And we've already voted on that. So, right. So we shouldn't have to rehash that. I do want to know could someone remind me what the registrar increase to keep the budget flat is?
That was my suggestion, because the decrease is because last year was a presidential, and the concern is that voting changes are going to come and we will have spikes. And I mean, it was just a suggestion to try to smooth that out so we don't have ups and downs in the account. But I'm not going to it can come down.
So you're saying to keep it flat in order to potentially have the same impact for an elections this year, and is that what that means?
Yeah, and again, the suggestion was to put that 25 into a fund to be designated for registrar/voting election needs when we do see the new rolls come down. I don't know when it's going to be, but instead of having to come up with $100,000 for technology or otherwise, if there was money set aside already for that. But again, it's an assumption on my part. So
maybe we could just take that out.
Yeah, and I'm
right.
fine with that. Can we just go back to the parks position? Again, I'll move on from the police to your point, Wendy, but we lost maintainers, not a maintenance tech, from the materials here. And the master plan, if I'm reading the cover note correctly, says there's a recommendation for maintainers. So remind me again why we're doing a maintenance tech and not maintainers.
Because
Sean,
we've lost a certain skill set for mechanical maintenance and proficiencies that we either had in other assets or we use outside assets to accomplish. And the technician also comes with a higher approval, sign-off approval on safety issues and issues of safety and such.
But the need is a maintainer from the report.
But they have that functionality too, Orlando, correct? That person has a functionality as well.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, Orlando.
Yeah, Sean, that is correct. We have lost, let's not say we've lost maintainers. We have lost positions, okay? Over the last 10 to 15 years, we've lost 2 park school leaders that are actually higher level staff members that were handling a lot of this mechanical repair work that we currently are having issues maintaining. So they weren't just maintainers, they were higher level park school leaders that were never failed over the last 10 to 15 years. So that's why we're requesting this position as a higher level position, because the skills needed to maintain some of these pumps and irrigation systems and refrigeration systems are required with some kind of technical background.
Okay, so just on page 3 of the letter, the master plan has identified a need to add 2 to 3 park staff members to adequately maintain our parks, facilities, open space, and trails. So is that the same thing as what we're saying here, or is that a different?
It's exactly the same thing. It's a parks facility. I mean, it goes playgrounds, it's pools, it's rink, it's whatever. A prime example of what we're asking for is if anybody was following the Simsbury Neighbors page yesterday about the Iron Horse Playground. If we had the ability last summer with people, we were man down most of the summer. If we have that parks tech, they're doing that playground inspection. We catch the worn parts earlier. We get them ordered sooner. We get them installed sooner. This is some of the issue. That's a prime example of both the staff training we're looking for and the tech position is yesterday.
Hey, Sean, if you don't mind, can I jump in?
I just have one more. So
Sure.
Remind me where in the submission where the data is, Eric, that you're referencing, besides the master plan?
Are you talking about the data for the parks position?
Yeah.
I think
15 years ago, the position was cut.
Well, I've been influenced by by the scope of the parks department having increased over that period of time with fewer people.
And I could speak to that briefly. So the way that the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, the firm that was working on that for us, they did do a quantitative analysis to get to that recommended number. So they took a look at things like miles of trails that we have, how much acreage we have in our parks that are active versus open space. So they really took a look at our whole portfolio of parks infrastructure. And then they also took a look at, comparable communities and adequate staffing levels. And so they did quantitative analysis to get to that recommendation for us. We just don't have that level of detail in the report, but they did do that work for us. And I don't know if Tom, you wanted to add anything else to that point.
Before you answer that, so comparatives to other towns, so like another example of that would be the officer per thousand ratio, same kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that was a piece of it, right? But then they also looked more comprehensively again at like how much acreage we have to maintain, how many miles of trail we have to maintain, things of that nature.
Comparative metrics, right? I mean, again,
well,
Yeah,
All
my
of our
point is,
parks,
we have them for both positions, but okay.
I would
all
say
of
at
our,
this point, we have less so for police. I think we could probably provide more data for you on that.
I can go all night, guys. So if somebody wants to call the question, you can.
Can I interject with just a different question or maybe a different way of looking at this?
yeah,
Tom, the other day when you brought up your presentation, we were talking about software, and I understand it's not part of this, but I feel like it's relevant. So if we're going to do the new software that's going to identify efficiencies, identify where the needs are, I'd like to do that before we add the position.
Yeah, I think I may have oversold in my spiel. Oversold in trying to be enthusiastic. The efficiencies, Jackie. Certainly, we're going to see our response time to problems in the parks when people report them. The response time is going to improve. Somebody still needs to do that work, and I would argue that with this software and additional signage that we're going to put around these facilities, hey, if you see a tree down, if you see a broken piece of equipment, we're going to be getting more calls than we probably get now. And we're obviously going to want to respond to those and get those things taken care of. The work that has to be done doesn't go away. The response time hopefully will be quicker, and preventive maintenance as well.
I feel like it would be beneficial to have the software to know where the need is and, like you said, efficiencies. So.
And I have one more question on the parks maintenance. Just I understand the need. I understand you guys asked for it last year, right? And we said no. So is there any way that could be, or do you do contractors for work like that? You know, is that feasible or possible instead of a full-time position with benefits?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Wendy, I mean, there's probably very limited things that we could contract out because it would be considered bargaining unit work. So we would most likely, if we were to contract out, I would say a majority of this work, we would most likely receive a prohibitive practice for contracting out bargaining unit work. So I don't think that there's much that this position would be doing that we could contract out, again, without getting an MPP.
I was doing my due diligence to ask.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. And this is where Mira comes up again. And it's a good thing that kind of circles back to Mira. So
yeah, in the real world, there probably are cost savings to being able to do that. I wanted to get a pulse check from my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen whether this is an operating budget that you can support with the items that are currently in here.
Well, I had suggested taking out the registrar, right?
I took out everything.
Everything. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I keep looking at the list. Sorry.
I know. I had taken out everything except for the assessor and the Meals on Wheels. So did you want me to put that back in, Eric?
Let's have just a brief conversation. Sean, I heard you say no. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I would want Spirit in there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the problem, is that I'm looking at the blue and I'm saying it's in here.
Me too.
Yeah, Amy, please go ahead and add those additional items.
I mean, do you want to do the route we just did with the police officer? I mean, because I think the chip them off one at a time, whether they're in or out, just to have a vote so we can move on.
I'm in favor, sure.
All right, so I move that we add the Spirit Council 22,000 officially to the operating budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous.
I move that we add the Parks and Rec professional development to the budget, 2,500.
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 I move that we add the police de-escalation training to the budget.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And that passes unanimously.
And I move that we put the library children's materials for 8,000 in the budget.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay.
So you have two left. You have the Parks and Rec position.
No, I'm sorry.
I noticed that,
I moved
Sean.
to put the Parks
Funny.
and Rec maintenance technician in the budget.
I'll second that, Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
I'll be a no.
Wait, I heard me and Chris. Who else? Did anyone else said aye?
I did.
I said aye.
Okay. Is anyone opposed?
I am.
Opposed.
Okay. That motion passes 4-2.
Again, I'm not opposed. I know they need, but I would like to see the software first, just to be clear.
And Jackie, for the record, I don't think your position's crazy.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, you're welcome. What are we missing?
The registrars, it's not yellow, so.
Yeah, so that's the only one that you haven't said yay or nay to.
I think we can deal with that separately, right? That was, again, just a suggestion to
So it's
put
out.
money off to the side. So
Now it's in.
So I move to, like, or do I move to take it out, or do I move to leave it in?
what do you mean? So Maria's budget did not, it had a $25,000 decrease in the registrar. So that's back in, Amy?
Right.
Oh, okay. So just take it out.
So remove it.
Because then it's back to Maria's budget.
That's the
Quick question, since we got it here. Sean, this is directed at you, the de-escalation, which I'm in favor of. Is there any possible offset with the request on the virtual reality training tool? Like, would you still need that? If you had that, is that a module that's included in the capabilities of that?
I mean, the chief's here, but I believe that the de-escalation is formal training. That is classroom based, whereas the virtual is more situational training. But the chief, I think you just came off mute and can explain better.
Yeah, Sean, you're exactly correct. The de-escalation training is a formal class that we have 2 instructors for already. That training is not scenario based. It is a sort of a standalone, and that requires just time in classroom here. It does go hand in hand with the training simulator, because when the training simulator gives you opportunities to practice that de-escalation, to identify what needs to get done, and then if things go bad, it gives you opportunities to practice on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. I just wanted to clarify.
And Chief, we're going to talk about the VR thing later. But with that, by having that, is that going to end up increasing over time to use it, or will it be part of the training estimate here?
Are we talking about the 8,000 for the de-escalation training?
Yeah. So if we were to move forward with the CNR budget item, right, for the VR, which is for next year, but I'm going to bring it up for this year potentially. The $8,600, would that cover training to use that also, or was that going to be something additional later?
So the 8,000 is for the de-escalation training alone. The estimate, right. Yeah. So the estimated additional $8,000 is for that training simulator for that first year, because we will have only a handful of people who can proctor and train who have been certified as instructors in use of force or responding to aggression or in de-escalation techniques. So we would need some time in order to get more people trained for that. I expect, as the video that I circulated shows, you're going to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of training at all different hours of the day on your shift. Mm-hmm. You identify a quick need, you can pull that officer in. In the future, the amount of overtime that is required or money that's required to train with that simulator will go drastically down, because it'll just be incorporated in our regular shift work.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was asking, if it would result in more overtime, but it sounds like no, because you could use it Correct. Whenever you can use it.
That would be the plan on how to use that appropriately, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And the de-escalation training is mandated with the police accountability bill. It's not mandated that it's 8 hours, and it's not mandated that it's done in the manner that we do it, but it is mandated, and it's.
Yeah, I have no problem with that at all. I think that's good to have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else to discuss on operating before we move to capital?
So can we just scroll down and just see where we are? It's like, hey, when we're, thank you. So it's a $55 median home impact, incorporating everything that we've discussed, incorporating the 20-year amortization and the fall mortality tables. Correct? And the current estimate for debt service of 6.75. Starting to get it, Sean. Okay.
You're good. You got it.
I'm good.
Well done, Wendy.
But from what goes out in the mailer is we're a 3.29% increase.
Yeah, that's not really good, but
No, actually we're 3.35 if you include the operating transfers. Yep.
3.5.
Yep.
Hopefully we also include the mill rate number. Or I'm sorry, the median increase. Okay. Just a quick pulse check before we move to capital. Does anyone need like a 5 to 8 minute break?
Sure.
Okay, this is actually not a bad time. Why don't we take a break, come back right at 7 o'clock, and then we'll pick it up with the CIP. Welcome back. Maria, I'm not sure, actually, maybe Amy, who has the CIP worksheet that we were using the other day. Okay. That'd be a good place to start. I could give a little bit of context.
Yes, please. I think that'd be a great next step.
Okay. For I know people on this call know what the story is, but the guidance that we've received from the Board of Finance is to keep our debt service below the 8% line, which is challenging with the Latimer Lane Renovate as New project if we move forward with that this year. So Sean and I met with some key members of staff on both the town and the Board of Ed side, and we looked at what projects we could change, defer, or push off in order to allow our capital to be below the 8% line, which you can see we've successfully done. I want to stress to this board, obviously, no decisions have been made. This is a starting place, and we wanted to put this together so that it's something that you could react to. Sean, I don't know if you're there, but I wanted to see if there was anything you wanted to add at this point. Not sure if he's back.
I am back. Sorry. I'm sure you said really good things.
Very good things.
I heard the starting point.
Starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. And you emphasized again, we talked to Matt, Amy, Maria, Melissa, and I believe there's Board of Ed representation here tonight that helped us frame out as you just said, the starting point for this conversation. So
yeah. So I think the intent is to see how we can make Latimer work. Moving it to referendum this year while keeping debt service below the 8% line in the years to come. Amy, anything you would want to share on this graph before we move to the actual worksheet to see how we made it work?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory that with the changes that we made that we're pretty much right around the 8% mark. And now it's just a matter of reviewing those changes and see if you wanted to adjust anything. So I will put up the plan.
I just make one quick comment, Amy, that the Latimer debt issuance is on here is assumed to be 20, right?
That's right. So the Latimer debt issuance is 20-year bonding.
So that's the hot pink and the light pink?
Right.
Or the fuchsia and the light pink, whatever color we're going with.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's a change from the last view. It was 15, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Well, is that how it works? Basically, that's the sum total of the magic.
No, so there were some other very tough decisions made in order to keep that, everything below that line. That's
Yeah,
what
no, there's a lot more to it, Chris. Yeah, but a good question.
It's all hiding behind there.
I can take you through some of the changes that we made. So basically, there's two sections. So there's the capital plan that you're used to seeing. And down here is everything that we moved off of the capital plan in order to get under the 8% line. So we have some public works projects. We have the senior center. We have the sixth grade addition to the Henry James. A lot of those big items are what allowed us to get under that 8% line. So
Amy, before you move off that, can you just go back to there? Sorry.
Sure.
Just real quick. What's really important here, guys, and I know it probably goes without saying for this group, but for the folks at home and for everyone else, this doesn't mean that these aren't priorities. This doesn't mean that they aren't really, really important. But as it says, projects to be revisited in future years is very much what this means. So they're cut or potentially cut based on what we do tonight, from the sense of they're no longer going to be on the CIP if we agree and send it to the Board of Finance that way this evening. But, in speaking with the superintendent, the Board of Ed, the Henry James, the sixth grade priority is still very much alive and well. They want to spend some more time diving into that number. Admittedly, they've put a ton of effort into Latimer, and Henry James was really important. But I think there's an opportunity for them to go back and dive in further on that. Same being true with our facilities, master plan for the town. We just got that, right, Maria? And we know there's going to be costs there, but we can't definitively sit here and say to the board tonight or the Board of Finance in a week, we know this is absolutely true. And it also doesn't mean we're just going to shove it back in next year either. It means we're going to thoughtfully go through as a board and figure out where it makes sense, right? So sorry, Amy, for jumping in, but just wanted to frame that again for this is a new line. This is a new way to do it, kind of the above and below. But if you had to pin me down at this point to a prioritization, I would say whatever's up on top are our known priorities today. And these potentially could rise up and become known priorities in the future, is how I would look at it. Eric, is that a fair capture of the conversation the other day?
It is. And I just think we just need to underline again that the Henry James project, moving the sixth grade there, is obviously a priority of the Board of Education. It is very much on the table, but the superintendent said that they can look at the scope of that project. It's something that could be done in a later year, perhaps, than originally discussed, but it's very much on the table.
Yeah, and I think, is Jeff Tyndall here or other? I don't know. I don't want to speak for the Board of Ed, but is Jeff or others, is that consistent with your conversations with Matt?
I'm here as well, Sean.
Sorry,
let me defer to Susan. Yeah.
Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that is absolutely consistent. We're happy to go back and relook at the costs associated with that Henry James number. But as we have stated all along, the Latimer Lane is far and away our priority.
Okay.
Can I'm still missing. I don't. You guys are going to laugh at me for asking this question, but I'm assuming. I thought the 20-year, 15 to 20, that was the secret sauce that makes this thing whole work. But you guys are talking about senior center and Latimer, Henry James, but those are still on there in the same positions that they were before. So what am I missing?
No, they're not. So Amy, roll back up. Sorry, I think this is what Amy was getting to. They're cut from the plan, Chris. So everything above that new blue title is still on the plan. So you'll see here, there is no senior center anymore under general government. It's officially, if we vote on it tonight, it's officially off the CIP, because one of the requests from the Board of Finance originally, and again affirmed last night by Lisa, is the quote unquote true CIP to conform to the debt capacity.
Okay, so then just tell me why moving it. So why is it represented down below then? What is it? What's the difference between the above and below?
So above is on the plan, which conforms to Amy's graph that she put together, which shows us where we are respects to 7% or 8%. Below it's still a project that we're considering as a community. but it no longer holds a place on the 6-year plan. To take that one step further, when we deliberate next year, or when staff brings us a recommendation, Chris, you would potentially see Henry James in the 27-28 spot, or you would see it in the 26-27 spot at a revised number.
Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, so I understand the Meadowwood Meadowwood policy. I understand thank you, Sharon. I understand the community center.
Yes.
Moving off the top line. But the Henry James is still in its same spot so what's
roll down, Amy, if you could.
It's gone.
So it's gone, Chris. Henry James occupied.
I'm sorry, I just printed 74 versions of the SIP in the last.
No.
It's okay, so.
It's okay. It's confusing. That's why we tried to get ahead of it and frame this out. But again, it's a new concept. So you see what you have in the packet, Chris, and what the friends have at home and everything else is up until this total capital projects number. That's the bottom line that Amy's highlighting. So those are the substantive changes that were actually made. So those numbers, if you recall previously, were much higher because they had all the other projects in them.
Yes.
So the Henry James is officially, again, if we all agree tonight, is no longer included in that total capital project total at the bottom there.
At the very bottom, yeah, the old one. Okay, but you're
Right.
still showing it as a fork. So to a certain extent, you've also restated how you visualize the plan here. Okay, fine.
We have, because again, from a transparency standpoint, Chris, we thought it was important, both from the Board of Ed side and the town side, to say, look, this isn't dead. The senior center concept, the community center concept is not gone. We are still looking at that as a community. And as Susan just stated, very much still looking at 6th grade as a Board of Ed priority. But as we stand here today, it doesn't rank out to hit this 6-year capital plan.
Yep.
As
Okay,
it evolves and as that number changes and evolves, it will come back on a future CIP.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm looking more. I put how I've been defining ladder to myself, and I'm sure Matt and the rest of the team wants to correct me, but I see Latimer as a structural need, and I think I've been viewing Henry James as a strategic need and change, so not a structural need. So I'm comfortable understanding more what is truly the long-term need of Henry James, and then the true hard dollar cost associated with it. So thank you.
And a big part of, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one suggestion though, maybe for looking at, to me, it would have been easier to have a column that said years 7 through 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then put the numbers there, so I could look across and see it's not there anymore, it's here. And then have an idea, because this makes it look like I can't, I'm not sure if I'm scrolled down to see it, but it still is slotted below, but it's still slotted, looks like it's part of that year where it's not anymore.
I see what you're saying. So just put the dollar amounts maybe to the column O, Amy.
To the right. Yeah, I'm just saying that's how I think.
Yeah, I agree. It helps. Would you just carry it out?
Yeah, that's fine. And again, the reason we didn't put 7 through 10 is because I think charter-wise, we're required to maintain a 6-year capital plan.
Yeah.
And again, we can certainly, I don't know, we could represent other years on there, but the 6-year capital plan is what we're supposed to maintain. But just trying to capture again that these are priorities, but they're not encompassed in a year yet. So, but I think we can put it in column O or P or whatever.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep talking. It's almost as Wendy idea. I understand that we have a presentation. We have guardrails to how this must be presented, but we need to be talking about this more than in March, right? And so if you have out years, if you put a column that says this is the addendum piece, whatever, but because Matt and Neil and the team continue to talk to us about the needs of the school system. And I think we, just like some positions, we just sort of feel like we get them and hear about them for the first time in the budget that's presented to us. This is sort of along my lines of my human capital. If we're allowed to, if we're able to see what's in the future, it helps us talk to people when they come up to us at Fitzgerald's and say, why? And this is, well, we know that we're going to swallow squadron. They've talked about squadron line, but it's actually not on this piece of paper. And I don't care if it's in year 8, 11, or 20, but it's on the plan, and then we start to visualize it. So I'll stop there.
I think that's very fair, Chris, right? The Board of Ed, I think, is a year or two ahead of us, right? They have their facilities master plan, so they can speak, articulately, they can articulate their needs for the next 20 years, right? And I think we're going to have those conversations, right, Maria, very soon about what and how and when do we want to prioritize our master plan. And I think what I'm hearing in your comments is how do we incorporate that here or into a visual so that we can encapsulate the entirety of both of those plans from a funding standpoint, right?
Amy, could we just see where we went over the 8%, just so I can zero in on that year?
2 years away.
So what year is that?
Yeah, so that's 2026.
2026.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so what's important here is Latimer doesn't actually put us over the 8%. It would be the 25 issuance, not the Latimer project itself.
Mm-hmm.
The Latimer project only puts us at what, 7.8, 7.9, Amy, at that brief period, and then we drop down below the 7% the next year.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
So I have a question on some of the items priorities, and I'll just start with the senior center, the community center. So I take it's been on the plan for 10 years, and now it's off the plan. But there's things on the plan, and there are different years. So I don't know how you figure it out, but there's different years where there's almost 5 million in bonding over a couple years that I don't even know how the priority of some of these items. And maybe they're on the bottom. I just don't, but the town hall renovations, 3.1 million, entrance. Oh, I think that's not, the Drake Hill, 1.8. What else is there? The performing arts bathrooms, the splash pad, that's another $1 million for those two. So you're keeping those in, but we're taking out the senior center. I'm just trying to understand, because people are listening and everybody has a different need out there. What places those more important than the community center?
I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it. The challenge is with a big project is we could kill all of those small projects and we still can't fit the senior center in the capital plan the way it's done today, because of the size of the school commitment that we have in front of us. So part of it is what fits after you do a big one. And part of it, I think, and Maria, jump in here, is, the senior center was revisited, the community center was revisited as part of the master plan. Again, I've voted on it, I think, twice, and neither option has happened. I think we approved 6 million or 5 million the first time. I'm not entirely sure where we're putting it right now. So much like the Henry James project, I think we need to reimagine and revisit that topic. And again, I know this is going to frustrate Mr. Ornstein and other folks, but I don't think any of us can sit here today and be in a position to vote on what the senior center or community center would look like, and whether that 9.8 million is an actual number, a theoretical number, what does it get us, et cetera. Which is why I asked for it to be moved to the bottom. We're not decommitting to the senior center, the community center. What we're saying, I think, is that we need to reinvigorate that process. And is it 7, Wendy, or is it 12? I don't know. I have no idea what the real number is, what we get. I mean, are we building a coffee shop and a bocce court and fitness centers?
A place for seniors to go have lunch and play bridge, which they do today in Eno, right? If Eno was refigured to accommodate seniors, which it's not, I don't think that was, they negated that in the plan. If that was an option, obviously that would have been everyone's top choice, I believe, to make Eno, compliant and available for a community center right downtown. I mean, that to me, that's the ideal situation. And the plan said they couldn't do that. Now, is it possible to go back to that plan? But again, the 3.1 in town hall renovations must have been part of the facilities plan, which I don't know what's being renovated there, but that's 3.1. And again, the renovation, I'm just representing the constituents of seniors. Like we split the Latimer bonding in 2 years. So is that something you could do if that was going to be funded, or if Eno was going to be renovated? I just hate to see it taken off the plan. People have been looking at that for 10 years and then it just disappears. Yeah, I'm in favor of Latimer. So
we could split it in half, but I guess my point is it's an empty promise at this point, is we don't know what we're doing.
Well, we just had the facilities do a plan on it, so people are starting to know what they're doing, correct?
Yeah, what is the cost?
That's a consultant's opinion.
Right, what was the cost associated with that consultant's opinion? I forget. Maria, wasn't there a dollar on that?
Yeah,
26?
Tom has a recollection off the top of his head. I think we budgeted a placeholder in the 9 to 10 million range if we were to tear down the Apple Barn and rebuild a community center at that location.
Yep.
I do know that the placeholder, renovation project, and this is an old figure because it would have involved a parking deck and some other things. At the time, that was over $8 million. So trying to renovate, it's sort of like a square peg, round hole. It's like, it's just
I'm not a fan of that. But the 26, 27, I'm trying to understand of the 26, 27, 98, 9.8. How far off is that from the consultant's recommendation? That's all. Just so big as if it's real or not, that number. Because to Sean's point, the 9.8 is what blows us through. There's no capacity for anything else. But if that number, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of us. That number was 5. I don't know.
No, it was in the range of 9, like Maria said, and it was a little bit more robust than what was planned.
Yeah, and why that project is, since we're talking, why that project is of dear interest to me is far more than, and why we're going to call it a community. I think at some point in the future, it will allow us to elevate the level of social services, or how we provide social services in this town. And that's really, I hope, what is probably the most use that comes out of that facility. So
I agree with you, Chris, but I'll tell you, the prior plans that I reviewed were not focused on a social services delivery model. They were focused on a centralized congregation facility. So that's part of what we got to decide, right? Is what type of facility are we building and investing in? Because the first one, and the one we were looking at originally, again, was a coffee shop, and it was fitness rooms, and it was places to congregate. And I agree, and you could argue either way. We have those types of facilities around town, or as and again, we did address some of the kitchen needs. So again, are we trying to feed people and help people apply for government programs and work on mental health issues and social services stuff? That's a very different configuration than gathering space.
Well, I just want to put in there, like the coffee shop, and that was just part of the facility, the Tecton architecture. Nobody's ever spoken about wanting or needing a coffee shop in the senior center.
Wendy, respectfully, right? You're incorrect. That was what was recommended originally a couple of years ago when I was on this board.
Okay, did not know that. I wasn't here.
Yeah. Right.
Sean is correct.
This is the third time I've deliberated on this. So, yes.
So can I just try to frame the conversation? Mm-hmm. I think that we could spend all night debating the merits of a senior community center, but my understanding, unless unless someone can tell me otherwise, is that the math doesn't work to be able to do Latimer, Senior Community Center, and keep debt service under 8%.
And Meadowwood.
Meadowwood doesn't knock off the senior center, no.
But it doesn't allow us to do
Mhm.
all three and keep under 8% though.
So on the one hand, all we're technically agreeing to tonight is what would be in column, I'm not seeing, I think it would be column D. It's what we would be, committing to this year.
Yeah.
But if we commit to moving forward with the Latimer project, it also, and I don't say this negatively toward the project, but it limits our options significantly in future years.
And again, you're right, Eric. And we were asked to present the out years, which we haven't really focused on as hard as we are this year in the past, because of the size of the Latimer project, that the Board of Finance definitively asked us to prioritize the out years as we know them today.
So can we go back to the graph then, Sean, and go, and so so this, I think is also illuminating for the public purposes, by moving to the 8%, by taking on the Latimer project, by moving it to 20, we essentially, the pinch here is, we're talking as if the pinch is permanent. And I think it's worth it to talk to folks that help folks understand that it is a period of time where we don't have latitude, keeping everything equal. But it doesn't mean that I feel like we're talking like this is forever. This is the new trajectory we're on forever. And that's not necessarily true.
You're absolutely right, Chris. And this graph exemplifies that. I'm comfortable saying to the Board of Finance that the intent would be to go to 8% on a temporary basis. And as we work in the out years to manage the blue, the gray, and the checked white and green of how do we return back to that 7, or it gives the Board of Finance time to decide philosophically, are we going to stay at 8? And we're not committed there. Or do we drop down to 7.5 because that makes sense, or do we drop all the way back to 7? Again, this plan, and I commend Melissa and Amy and Maria and Matt for looking at it that way. Again, it doesn't commit us to 8 is the new norm.
Eric, I'd like to jump in. Sean is correct when he talks about the Senior Community Center, and there are different models, and we need to decide which model we want. If we are meeting a place to congregate and have coffee and eat together, is one thing. If it's more a social service providing site, that is a different level. While I am extremely bothered that we are doing what we are to the Senior Community Center, I do think it's the right choice. I think this chart is actually based on an assumption of what our debt is going to be. We don't know what we're going to use for our cash to pay for some of these things. I think it's a good conservative model to use, and it's appropriate. But I do think it is the way to move forward. And if I will reluctantly, given a choice between Latimer and the Senior Community Center, I will vote to do Latimer right now because it is a need. But I am extremely concerned of what we're doing to the Senior Community Center. But we have to revisit that and get tighter numbers, just like we're doing with Latimer Lane. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not saying not to do Latimer Lane. I've been in on that from the beginning. So I don't look at it as a choice. I'm looking at all the other items that are still in the CIP that maybe we just need more detail on so we can understand what those are for. Like I mentioned the 3.1 for town hall renovations, because these are all going to add to that 8% debt service. But we don't really have a picture of what they mean. So yes, I see what you've pulled out, as, from the discussion that you guys had, but there's still stuff in here that maybe we really don't need or are not a priority to everyone. So
Yeah.
maybe more detail just to the board would be helpful.
Well, I mean, the good news is we're not actually deciding tonight on any of those, right? The only vote we take is on 21, 22.
Well, I get that now. I just picture, just like, bear with me. So next year and the year after, if we all are elected,
Yep.
we're going to be at 8% debt service. So first of all, that's already going to add additional taxes to people, right? Because we're not there today.
No, we're going to be at 8% in 25.
Okay. So that's going to add to people's taxes. And then in those years, there's other projects that really, to me, I guess, become also become questionable, right? Not just the ones that were pulled out, but the other ones are also on the chopping block. Or I don't want to say chopping block, but you know what I'm saying? Like the splash pad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not, is that a high priority? So, I guess I can deal with it if it's put that way, but again, there still needs to be some more detail on some of these other projects that were not taken out.
Absolutely. I think the difference is it feels tonight like we're committing to a plan for the next 6 years.
We're not.
All we're doing is showing one way that this model can mathematically work with us doing Latimer in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's no different than what we do. Wendy, I understand where you're getting at, and I would love that as well, but I don't believe we have the analysis at this point, especially for the out year projects, because that's simply not how we manage them at a staff level, right, Maria? I mean, we true those numbers up and revisit them as we get closer and closer, which is, we all joke every year. The CIP is never the same thing when you look at it from 1 minute to the next, because construction costs change, priorities change, board members change. So, I mean, if anybody's concerned about being held accountable for 2025 projects, I can assure you we never have been in the past. And I certainly wouldn't say, well, you supported this in 21 when we get to 25. I mean, that's not reasonable, because again, we only approve what goes into the budget, the referendum at this point. There's no vote actually taken on the rest of the plan. So we could zero out the rest of the plan, candidly, Wendy, and show nothing on there, or we could shove it all back in, which is traditionally what we've done. Is we've had a placeholder for everything under the sun that we could think of, which the Board of Finance has taken exception to.
Yeah. So Wendy, to your concern about wanting to see details of the plan of that town hall renovation, we would obviously see those plans when it actually comes up to that year.
And I could just quickly elaborate on that. So that actually was initiated before I even arrived here, because the last, I think, major renovations to the level of town hall, that's sort of like the main level that most of the public comes to, was it the early 80s or late 70s?
It's kind of right in that general gist, but it certainly is not a new facility, and it's clearly showing its age in terms of finish and serviceability, and the other challenges, of course, is ADA accessibility.
Yeah, thank you. And so there was actually a comprehensive study just of town hall that was done. It was just wrapping up when I became the town manager. So we've had the plans and the documents ready for quite some time. It's just, again, right, trying to fit that work into our capital plan, which has been really challenging. So it's kind of been pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. But that actually did predate our facilities master plan. And we do have that document. So if that's something you're interested in taking a look at, we can help provide that. That was done, I think that was finished in early 2018. Is that correct, Tom?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And then the other project I did just want to quickly mention, if I could have a moment, just since the splash pad was mentioned a couple of times. And Amy or Melissa, would you mind going back to the Excel spreadsheet so we could pull that project up in the number? Thank you. So you may recall from some past conversations, and I think this might be in the project sheet detail, and if it's not, I apologize. But Memorial Pool is quite old, and Orlando and Tom T, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's at least 40 years old and has never had a major renovation. It leaks water considerably. It leaks a considerable amount of water. It needs to either basically be completely redone or filled in and replaced with something else. And so some of the estimates, that we got to do that, and including the facilities master plan that was recently completed, was in excess, I believe, of $2 million. So if we were to essentially take out the pool and replace it with a splash pad, this is a much lower cost option in terms of the infrastructure that's already in place. So I'm sure it would be tough for folks to lose the pool in that neighborhood, but replacing it with a splash pad is just a much lower cost option. So that's essentially what that project would be. It would be some minor renovations to the bathhouse that's currently there. And again, that pad would be replacing the pool. And I don't know, Orlando or Tom, if you wanted to add anything about what that project or number reflects.
No, you're exactly right, Maria. Yeah, the pool was built in the 1950s. It's had some minor renovations over the years, but the concrete deck around the pool, the lining of the pool are all failing at this point. There was a renovation of the mechanical systems within the last 20 years, so that part is a little bit newer. But yeah, what we'd be looking at, choices: take the pool out and put the splash pad in. The splash pad, we've had the talk about minimum wage going up. We can operate the splash pad with one person, whereas the pool, we're talking for a camp day there, maybe 10 between guards and others.
Tom, again, going back to my sermon on difficult decisions, there is the third option is we don't do anything at all. We take it all out.
Mm-hmm.
We have to talk like people. We have to talk like that as well.
Sure.
Yep, you're very correct.
And in 2023, Chris, or whenever we want, we can have the conversation to spend $100,000 to fill the hole in, if we want to, right? Or we could have a fill in the hole party.
We're going to take material. We're going to take material from the Stoddard Dam that we bring that up there.
No. We're using that for Tom's berm.
No, there's enough for both projects.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. Our premier program, the Camp Stuff to Do program, does use that facility and has used that facility going back to before I got here in '99. So yeah, just a thought that there should be something there possibly, but I understand you have tough choices to make.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, and I'm sorry. One other just quick project. Wendy, I know you had referenced the renovations to the Drake Hill Flower Bridge. So
I did.
If you want, we could just quickly. I know Jeff is on the call. Jeff is our lead on this and worked with a consultant on assessing the condition of the bridge. Jeff, would you mind just briefly providing a bit of an overview of what that renovation work to the bridge would entail?
And Maria, before we do that, can we do it quickly because we still have to debate this year's capital plan?
Sorry.
Yeah,
sure.
I don't.
No,
I mean, I can get that on the side, Maria.
Okay, sure. We can definitely do that. But essentially, the bridge needs a rehab, some structural repairs, etc. So I can connect you with Jeff perhaps afterwards and have him give you an update.
Yeah, and I know I've taken up most of the air this evening, but
well, this is budget season, Sean, so I would expect nothing less from you.
Oh, come on now, be nice. So I think, Mr. Chairman, you have consensus on Latimer, right? I think what I've heard in multiple evenings from all of us is that we all agree it's a priority.
Yes.
We all want to do it. I think the recommendation is either 15 or 20 year, but that's under the purview of the Board of Finance.
Yep.
We've presented a plan that while we all understand there are good things and bad things on it, we have the ability to change as the Board of Selectmen when we do them. So is that a fair summation of what we got here?
I think so. I just want to make sure my other colleagues, who are seeing these proposed changes for the first time tonight, feel comfortable and have no other questions, at least right at this moment. Was someone else going to jump in? Did I hear a voice?
I was just going to say, because I can't see the bottom and the top at the same time. Because of the Latimer project, are all the other than the maintenance needs for the schools taken out, like the renovations for the kitchen, restroom, and the turf construction, are those gone?
No.
I believe those sports projects are on the lower plan.
Well, that's what I meant. They're not in the. So those are also below the green line.
They're below the line
now.
Yeah. And
okay.
In speaking with Matt, Wendy, they were going to go back and revisit the entirety of the athletics performance priorities in context with all of the other capital projects.
Okay, so basically the Board of Ed funding is stadium, security, Latimer this year, and then the maintenance needs that are in years 2, 3, 4. But the other ones are gone for now.
They're moved out.
Yeah.
They're moved to the
Yeah.
bottom. To me, the bottom is kind of out because we can't see it.
Yeah, I think it is important that we keep them in writing, so we're not losing sight of these. And we know that some of these things are going to come due, but not necessarily in the next 6 years. Okay, if there's nothing else here, I'm comfortable moving on to CNR, which is the final thing we would need to cover tonight.
So just to be clear, we are good with the 2021-22 capital plan as presented, inclusive of Meadowood, Latimer.
We talked
And-
about Latimer. I don't know that we had any discussion about Meadowood.
We didn't. It's in there though.
Again,
Is it in there? Yeah.
It's in there, and I'm.
Why don't we just pull it up and we can even verbalize the things that are in there for the upcoming budget?
Sorry, Eric, I just didn't want to skip ahead to that and then.
Yeah, no, not at all. I want to make sure that we're doing the due diligence. Amy, are you able to pull that back up one more time? Now that you've completely closed it, perfect.
And I think as Amy reminded me previously, I think we do. There's the one brief period in 25 where we go, or 24, 25 where we go over 8%, right, Amy, for a brief period of time.
Yeah.
So either we trim the package this year. So if you could go to the graph just to show it visually, sorry. So right there, that little blue line, well, so that's not entirely true. So the package this year and the entirety of Latimer does not breach the 8%. So we could send this on as is to the Board of Finance with a clean conscience that on a 20-year bond for Latimer, we are not breaching 8%. But we would have to revisit the later projects. So starting next year, when Amy would package those up and bond them in 25, right, Amy? Because those in their entirety would push us over briefly the 8% margin.
Right. So everything that's on here, everything that was taken off. All right, so I'm just going to start. So everything that has a yellow that's a 0, that was taken off. There's a couple things to make everything stay under the line that we did, like the town hall renovations were moved out a year. A lot of the bigger projects for the Board of Education. So the roof was originally in fiscal year 24. I did the bonding over 2 years so that we could get below that line. Same thing for some of the other roof projects. Although they're in 1 year for the project, I did the funding over 2 years. So also included in this plan to get under that line is Meadowood is half funded with bonds and half funded with cash, whether that's general fund reserves, capital reserves, possibly year-end funding. Half of this needs to transfer from bonds, some sort of cash.
Right, and thank you for reminding me. That was my suggestion. It was to move it on the capital plan this year, but to talk to you guys and potentially entertain a recommendation to bring to the Board of Finance using year-end savings, and then whatever cash was needed to offset half of that, so that we would not be borrowing the entirety of that amount to continue to give us the flexibility in the out years. So still doing the project, but doing it half bonds and cash, or we could potentially ask for all cash as well.
So Sean, what does that mean to the CNR if we're talking about these two things? If we're talking about doing half cash with Meadowood, does that pull cash that we would be using for other items?
In my mind, no, but the Board of Finance could come back and say, yes, you need to prioritize your cash requests against Meadowood, and then we would have to come back and have that conversation, Jackie. It's a fair point. To me, they would be two separate things, and that we would be asking for the quote unquote year-end $800,000 in the past or $1 million that gets transferred to reserves. Instead of transferring it to reserves, put it up against the Meadowood acquisition to defray the borrowing.
So that would be a conversation we would not be having now.
I mean, again, if you guys disagree and we want to do all bonds for it, or people feel differently. I mean, I think we need to come to consensus, A, on the project, and then B, on the recommendation of how to fund it. So right now it's half and half. If folks disagree with that, that's okay, but we have to come up with a funding scheme for it.
I'm trying to look at all of our costs, which you
Yep.
know, and we haven't got to CNR yet.
Yep.
So also, if we do this, and again, if we do half cash or whatever happens with CNR, how does that affect our mill rate? Because I know you said this would bring us under the 8% for
So
our bond.
it wouldn't impact the mill rate this year at all, and it would actually not impact the mill rate in out years any differently than the CNR plan or than the CIP plan you just saw, right, Amy? So
Well,
by
so
funding,
hold on, it kind of depends. So if we're using cash for this year,
yep.
It depends how you want to use that cash. So if you want to take $1 million and increase your expenditure budget, then yes, your mill rate is going to increase. If you want to use general fund reserves, there is no impact to the mill rate. If you want to use capital reserves, there's no impact to the mill rate. And then what Sean was saying about year end, so you would basically have to commit to using general fund reserves for that full $1 million. And then at the end of the year, because we can't count our chickens before they hatch, if at the end of the year we do have those savings, then that goes to offset and we're not using as much fund balance as what we anticipated during the budget process. Does that help?
Correct.
It does. It does help, Amy. There's just a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah. I agree, because it's hard to see what this says even. But so you're saying one thing.
I think with Jackie, Jackie, help me understand if this is what you're saying. It might be good for perspective for the public to understand that, we play this game with forecasting and collection rates and all that kind of stuff, which we know fairly consistently that we end up with a little more money than we budgeted for or we forecasted. That's our fund or slush fund. It's our bonus, whichever you may call it. And that is used for things like what Mike sometimes refer, the small cash accrual allocations here, there, and everywhere kind of stuff. So this would be essentially sapping the power of that event for one purpose versus multiple strategic potential purposes. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think that's fair, where we've used that money for other items.
Yeah, so that's a concern, because I think what you're saying is a concern that in the past we have generally used that event, this collection, this additional cash. We've generally used it, and we've used it for multiple needs that were significant, and we're probably not going to be able to do that in this instance, which is okay, because we're identifying this as an important.
But it's tying our hands a little bit.
Yeah.
Can I contribute to this though? That Chris, remember though that we traditionally use the year-end savings for items that are going to be or are approved in the upcoming out year CNR budget.
And we pull them forward.
We pull them forward. So my argument here is those are still funded in the budget we're going to present.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not getting cut. It's just a matter of which account are we paying for them from. To me, I don't candidly care which way the Board of Finance does it. If they want to pull forward $600,000 or $800,000 worth of projects from our CNR plan and pay for them in this year, cool. And then replace their spot with cash from next year for Meadowwood. That's fine with me. So my argument is that we would be doing both. It's a matter of which year and which account does it come from. So from a pure argument standpoint, what I'm saying tonight is that 50% of Meadowwood is bonded and 50% of it is paid from some sort of cash scenario that could either come from this year and next year, all of this year, or all of next year.
Yep, I agree. But it's just change of method. We have, not that it's a methodology change or approach change, because generally we have this event occurs and we go, and for a number of years we've done this. We've grabbed a couple of things and we've pulled them forward. And that's all I'm just saying, it's a change of that strategy, and I'm comfortable with it. But I'm just trying, so people understand where does that cash eventuality usually come from, and where does it go historically? What do we do with this? This is just a temporary change of the strategy, and I'm comfortable with it.
But also now is tying up some of that bonding that we just talked about, right? We're already pushing the limit of our debt.
Not because of this project.
Well, this will add to it.
Correct. But every project we do adds to it. So,
Okay,
I mean,
but another
bleachers-
project is a school. So
Yeah, I mean, another project is the bleachers, is the co-working space. I mean, yeah.
the bleachers has been pushed out, we talked about, and also they've come down in price,
Yep.
so they've looked at that again. As much as I, absolutely love this town, and I'm very lucky that we have almost 40% open space, I think we really need to evaluate this as, is it a want or a need?
Candidly, I think it's a need, Jackie, because I think the community was in such upheaval over this original development, and we spent millions of dollars in a court-ordered acquisition for a small piece of it, which the voters approved overwhelmingly, and $1 million in legal fees. And what's not lost on us either is that if this development were to come to fruition, the pressure it would put on Squadron would force, I think, an acceleration in the renovation and cost of the Squadron Line project to an already challenged capital plan. And again, if that Squadron project would have to move up, I think we're in an even harder spot. Much like the Latimer project accelerated to the front, rightly so, because of growth. And if you put 300 or 400 houses down there with 1.7 kids on a conservative basis, the numbers are not in our favor for what happens to Squadron.
Yeah.
Well, just to back that up, I just want to make a point, because I mean, I like Meadowood, but only based on what's the opportunity cost that we lose. But the school argument is, we don't even know if anybody's going to develop it. It hasn't been developed in 10 years or whatever. So it's not going to be anytime soon that whole piece of land is going to be developed and pumped into Squadron. I'm just trying to put that out there. I don't know if that.
No, it's a fair point, but it's, I guess, I'm willing to pay for it to not happen ever is what I'm saying. But Eric, I think you're right. Maybe we just call the question on Meadowood. So
sure. Do I make a motion, Sean?
I do.
Just quick question.
Yeah.
We're calling the question on Meadowood concept, not Meadowood funding methodology. Is that correct?
No,
clarity.
I mean, we could be here all night. So I guess
Okay.
I'm voting to include Meadowood acquisition at the 2.5 on the CIP with a recommendation for half bonds, half cash to be determined in conjunction with the Board of Finance.
I second it.
Room for, yeah, there's just for discussion.
Yeah, so at this point, let me open it for discussion.
Yeah.
The only discussion I want to have is what are we losing? I mean, what are we not able to do if we do it? Is there things on the CNR in out years that are coming that if we use cash, I don't really know, we're not going to be able to do, and then it's going to cost us more.
I think I think one of the things that moved around on the plan, I will fight that this is not necessarily culture, parks and rec. It's safety, it's quality, it's everything, it's policing, everything that this project affects. But the golf course irrigation is something that takes one more backseat to this because of this project. Now,
it moved here, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably, Wendy, to your point, that's probably the biggest opportunity here, is that if we weren't doing Meadowood this year, we would most likely be doing the sprinkler.
Golf course irrigation. There's irrigation needs also in this plan, not that are part of the golf course irrigation plan.
But it doesn't stop us from doing it. It just moves it.
Correct.
Yeah.
12 months further.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
my other-
one more question. Oh, go ahead. Who is
No,
that,
go ahead.
Jackie?
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
One more question. If I vote, if I said yes here, but then something in the CNR comes up and looks like we're missing out on doing some things in the CNR because of this, I may change my position.
Well, Wendy, this vote doesn't obligate you to support the entire package. This is just so we can, get
To move to the
consensus
next stage.
on
So,
CIP.
okay. Can we wait till we look at the CNR, or do we want to do it right now?
You know what? I don't want to go too far down that road, but one of the things we're going to see when we get to CNR is there's very little we can impact that's going to give us mill rate relief. But the
CNR plan is pretty baked. I mean, again, and it's a really thoughtful recommendation by staff, pulling all the levers on different funding sources. At the end of the day, we're going to need feedback from the Board of Finance on do they agree with the different levers that are being pulled? Where do they have concerns? And we'll have to revisit the conversation. But staff did send us a prioritization of CNR projects today. But again, Meadowwood doesn't stop us from doing anything on CNR at this point in time. And again, I think we need to stop singling out Meadowwood. I mean, because we could argue that the Performing Arts Center is stopping us from doing something in the out years, or paving is, you can argue anything on the CIP plan is potentially stopping it. But again, to me, from a town side, Meadowwood is a once in a lifetime opportunity, as Dave Bush said. And again, I'm not willing to let that pass, especially when we have a creative means to fund both it and the other needs in the community at this point.
Yep. I second everything that Sean just said.
So I understand there will be an operating cost with this. And I know it was talked about, and we were told that's going to be years out. But there is a plan to do fields. There is a plan for some maintenance and trails and parking and that kind of thing. What about the land that we purchased, the Triangle, 45 acres that was purchased, I think, right around the time of this settlement of Meadowwood?
Mm-hmm.
That was also designated for fields, and there's no fields.
I think it's farmed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I believe it's specifically excluded from fields, and it can be walking paths.
Yeah,
we
I agree.
have to maintain it as fields.
Somebody wanted to do that and we couldn't do it, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I thought it was correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, isn't that part of one of the leased parcels for farming?
We do have a couple of smaller parcels over in that area that are being leased. Actually, well, one of the leases expired, and then we do have a current lease.
Okay. I thought there was quail or something nesting out there too. We had to be real careful with.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I can add something to this if you guys.
Yeah.
Tom.
So two things. We did, when I first started, we did look into the deed restrictions on that Triangle property. We can build fields, but it's minimal improvement. There's no permanent sheds, no permanent parking. It has to be kept fairly rustic. Only portalets allowed over there. You can do farming on that. You're allowed to do a farm stand. The Open Space Committee and Tom Hazel is actually looking into what we can do over there and setting up an ag lease to potentially do farming on that property. We've had some interest, and that's something that could be explored.
The Meadowwood acquisition in no way at this point commits us to fields.
It does not.
Well, that's what I want to. Yeah,
No, it's not funded.
We said that.
No, that's another capital plan. We would have to. That would be an improvement. It would be access. I mean, there'd be permits. There's a whole bunch of stuff, right, Tom, that has to happen for us to do fields.
That's correct. And that buying that land without deed restrictions allows you to do anything. I know somebody brought up some things the other day.
Yeah.
But fields, it will be as an as needed basis down the line, and something for consideration at a much later date.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we maintain flexibility on the purchase as well.
Okay.
So I know you want to go. I have one more question, because I still feel like it could be. I know you don't want to table it, but I know we're talking about this year. But if I look at the CNR budget, there's a ton of stuff coming from the general fund in years 2 through 6, right? So is buying Meadowwood going to have to make us cut some of that, right? Is that what will happen in
No,
order to not impact to the taxpayer.
no, if we don't do Meadowwood and we don't replace it with anything, it would change the, it would change it
Debt
would
service.
change the debt payment in the out year, right, Amy? It wouldn't do anything next year, right? Because we wouldn't bond next year.
Right.
Right. So as far as the debt goes, it does impact the out years. I think what Wendy is talking about is the use of reserves. So I think, if we don't use the reserves on Meadowwood, could we potentially use it on other CNR? Yes. So
Potentially, yes.
right. But that's not to say next year we won't have a plan where we have, where we're able to build cash into the budget and able to support the CNR. And we're just not there yet. So is there a potential for using those reserves for something else? Yes, of course. It just kind of depends on where your priorities are.
Yeah, I mean, the other option here, Wendy, to that is we could recommend bonds for the whole thing, but then we're going to creep above the 8% in that out year. So we create a different problem. But again, it's not because of Meadowwood, it's because of Latimer. Meadowwood doesn't put us even above 7%.
Right. It's it's everything together.
It is.
And if we didn't use the reserves, Amy, if I'm saying this right, that's something we could also use to help with the mill rate when this does creep up in a couple of years.
Good.
The rating agencies specifically recommend that we don't use reserves for mill rate relief, right, Amy?
Right.
So what do we use for mill rate relief? Because I think we did it last year.
No,
If
we
it's not
didn't.
reserves.
We never passed it, right? We didn't ever approve that. They
Right.
budgeted for it, right, Amy?
Yes.
For the transfer. And we never approved it.
Got it.
The bond rating agencies are good with using reserves as long as it's a one-time expenditure, not for mill rate relief and not for operating expenditures.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right. And we would also be within the policy above 15%, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, guys, this town paid 3 times this acreage cost for Ethel Walker. So we're not exactly committing the taxpayers to a bad deal here. We're committing them to a substantially better deal than they voted on overwhelmingly in the past.
So Sean, you made the motion. I seconded. We've had a lot of conversation. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
I think I just heard Jackie. Okay. The motion passes 5-1. Okay. Let us.
Sorry.
Hang in
We're
there.
almost there, Chris. We're almost there.
Hang in there, buddy.
I was at.
Wakey.
I think the CNR conversation.
This morning.
Don't make me hit my alarm.
So when are we doing the votes? Are we going to do that at another meeting? Because we have to formally vote on this stuff, right?
We do.
Maria?
We were hoping, I think what Amy, Melissa, and I talked about today is that if we can sort of wrap up discussion by around 9 p.m., we think we have the motion somewhat ready to go. We're going to have to adjust numbers and run final math. So I think if we can get discussion wrapped up by 9, we can do the formal motions tonight. If not, we might have to have you do a super quick meeting, maybe around, say, lunchtime on Friday or Friday morning to do that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay. I think CNR will be a reasonably expedient conversation. Maria or Amy, do you have the worksheet that you sent us by email?
Yeah, so I think it would make most sense, Amy and Melissa, unless you disagree, to pull up the spreadsheet that Melissa put together, the revised revenue, project by revenue source. I think that really helps.
Yeah, it's very
compartmentalize. Yeah,
very
what we really can talk about.
And
yeah.
If it makes sense, would you mind starting off by showing us what levers we would have in theory if we wanted to make some changes to provide any mill rate relief?
Sure.
And to cut to the chase, there are not a lot of levers.
Oh, can't really see that. How does that come through for you?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
looks good. Thanks, Melissa. So, to Eric's point, and what we had really tried to do was identify potential revenue sources. And the traditional payback method is the 416,250. So that has been in the general fund for a long time. That, right, the Board of Finance is going to say is not up for conversation. So that column that shows traditional payback period, that's really not going to affect the mill rate, right? Because they're not going to entertain reducing that number. The capital, or at least I wouldn't think they would. The capital reserve, again, is not going to affect the mill rate. And then really what we're talking about that would potentially affect the mill rate, it's that column that is showing as additional cash. So that comes up to about $110,000 and some change. That's essentially level funded from last year. 110,000 is the equivalent of about 0.045 mils. I think it worked out to less than $10 a year or about 83 cents a month. So really, if you completely wiped out our extra cash capacity, which is that 110, everything else on here is not really going to have any effect or impact on the mill rate. Again, unless, and I don't think this would happen, the transfer from operating column. So you may recall some number of years ago, the Board of Finance requested that we fund our police cruisers, the replacement cruisers, as well as that one large public works truck that we purchase on an annual basis. We asked for that to be budgeted for in operating. So since they made that specific request to us, I would be very surprised if they then said, okay, let's pull that out. So that, again, I think when we're talking about if there's really anything that's going to affect the mill rate, it's, again, we were, I think, at 1.7 in terms of cash, excess cash that we had when I first got here. We're now down to 110,000. It's been whittled at a little every year. That's what we're really talking about. So I think, we've kind of prioritized, and I think that if that 110,000 in cash was to sort of come out, we would definitely reprioritize at least the police admin vehicle and the clubhouse repairs, and maybe pull some other things out. Another option, if you wanted to get rid of that additional cash, is would you perhaps want to take that 110,000 of the capital reserve? Our estimate with what we've proposed taking out of the capital reserve was still going to leave about 1.6 million and some change. So it's still in a very healthy position. If we were to take, again, that 110 of capital reserve, it's probably more around a 1.5 million balance that would be left. Sorry, it's a really quick overview, but we're really talking about the excess cash, which is 110.
This chart is beautiful. I love the way it's laid out. Thank you.
I thought you'd like it, Sean.
Melissa did that. Good
I
work,
do, right?
Melissa.
I mean, this is a ridiculously complicated topic, right? Because it's cash, and it's cash. Oh, and it's more cash, but they're 4 different kinds of cash, right?
Basically.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. And then everything below the line, with the exception of transfer from operating, those are revenue sources that are coming from, for example, the sewer use fund, which is an enterprise fund, grants that we're anticipating, things of that nature.
And Maria, am I correct that we always have the option at the end of the year to do end of the year transfers for that 110,000 if we chose?
Right, we could ask, the Board of Finance to pay for some capital projects with year-end savings if we had that. We've done a few very small things, I think, since I've been here. One in particular that's coming to mind is the fencing around the Performing Arts Center. That was an example of something that we had asked for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions, discussion?
Questions.
Wendy.
So one thing, I see the column traditional payback, right? And I keep bringing up next year. But if I look in the 2022, 22, 23 list, there's a lot more from what I see in that list. Does that equal the same amount as in the column this year? Like, is it the fixed amount that we pull, or is it going to jump up a lot next year?
No, and this kind of goes back to this conversation we've had for some time as we were asked to continue to whittle away at that cash capacity we had. Because again, right, budget a stable amount of cash. You can apply that. You don't have to bond for things. Right. As you can see, I mean, we have a lot of smaller capital needs. And so as our cash capacity has been reduced, it essentially means we're just pushing items out. So we're getting by longer with things, that aren't functioning well, or maybe are rotted or broken, et cetera. I mean, we're going to have hard choices. We had to make hard choices this year. I know we sent around a supplemental spreadsheet today that shows you we had a lot of CNR projects we had to push out to next year because we simply didn't have the cash to pay for them, and they don't reach a threshold where it would be appropriate for us to bond for them. So again, it's a lot of hard choices. We're basically taking what's in the worst shape essentially, and tackling it in the year and pushing other things out. An example I like to use as something we pushed out was the Weetog ball field backstop. It's over 40 years old. It doesn't meet modern code, but it's not as bad as some of these other things right on the list, or as critical to our ongoing infrastructure. So we had to push it out. And I think we're just gonna have to keep making those tough choices.
Yeah, and I mean, that's consistent with what we've been doing on here for 10 years, is there's always more on the list in the current year than we can pay for. So Wendy, directly, the traditional payback, barring a change in philosophy, doesn't change. We always get and always have had 416.
Right.
That doesn't change. The only thing on here that would change potentially is if we exhausted the capital reserve fund and there was no money in there, then there would be no capital reserve line item. And the 110 for the three cash items there, the additional cash, that floats and could float next year, and it floats every year. So it is a concern, but again, it's more of a holistic conversation with the Board of Finance and when and how do we pull the different levers and what's available. If that's making sense to everybody. So we still have the first line and the fourth column, transfer from operating, in each of the next 6 years, irrespective of what we do in capital.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, Sean, the additional cash items are going to change the mill rate.
Yeah.
Is that the only one that will? Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, so it's included in the current mill rate calculation that you've seen. That's already there. This wouldn't be in addition to. So essentially, if we pulled out the 110 in cash, we would have a mill rate savings of about 0.045 or less than $10 a year for the home. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. I've been advocating since we were up at the 1.7, don't come down off of that number. It's, again, ideally you want to build up cash, and then you want to have a stable amount of cash. In years where you have the excess cash, you would put it into capital reserve. In years where your needs exceed, that cash contribution, you could pull from capital reserve. But again, we've just been asked, the last 3 years by the Board of Finance to whittle away at that cash capacity. So again, we were at 1.7 and now we're down to $110,000.
And part of that is because the cash is part of the 7% figure. It's not over and above the 7% figure. I know you're shaking your head no, Amy, but it traditionally was.
No, I see what you're saying, but some of that cash that was in there that we had in prior years was within that 7% range, and it was still cut.
Still taken away. Right.
Right. But that was a philosophical decision for the Board of Finance to lower us below 7% all the way down. I think we went closer to 6, right? And that's why I'm disagreeing with you in that our board didn't take away or recommend less cash. It was the Board of Finance, right or wrong,
correct,
mistakenly reduced the overall capital spend because there was a focus solely on the bonded debt service and not a full appreciation or recognition that the cash component should have been added too. And we were carrying 6.7, 6.8 for 15 years in this town.
Right. I just didn't want you to think that 110 is there because we're at capacity between how it was done before, because we weren't. So.
Yep. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. So again, the challenge is as we've taken on more debt, right? It's partially eroded our cash capacity, and that's again why you saw in the mill rate worksheet why there's such a massive jump in the debt service line, right, Amy? Because we have more bonds that are coming on that we now have to pay for, And if we didn't bond those a couple of years ago, we would have the ability to A, either leave the mill rate where it is, or B, bring the mill rate up more slowly, and that money would then be turned around and there would be a bigger additional cash line item here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Long way of saying is our current capital discussion didn't take away the cash. It was the decisions of the last 10 years and what we bonded for that has eroded a lot of the cash contribution. And then philosophical changes.
But if we didn't have some of these items in the traditional payback and we moved some of the items from the additional cash column over,
Then
that
we
would
would
give
give the one, we'd leave the 110.
Right.
Okay. Are there other questions or proposed changes?
I have a proposed change. So I was intrigued, as you could tell, because I brought it up a few times, by the simulator for the police department, which is seems like, again, I don't have stats on the success of it, but the impact to de-escalation training seems like something that would be of importance, and the fact that we could save $30,000 if it was moved to this year. I was wondering, is there any capacity to use reserves for that and do it this year to save $30,000 next year to support the current staff at the police department, to help with the de-escalation training in today's climate?
But just to be clear, we funded the de-escalation training. This is for the simulator.
That was for
Right.
the,
Wendy, I don't put words in your mouth, but you're saying that those things could be have synergies and go together.
well, the $65,000 simulator, right, is in next year's CNR.
Yes.
And that's because if we buy it soon, we save $30,000.
Right.
Right?
But it's a simulator. It's not specifically for the de-escalation training. That's a different line item.
I know, I understand that now, but
Okay,
I
sorry.
thought the chief said it enhances, and it actually lets them actually live out the de-escalation. So I just didn't know if there was any reserve capacity for that.
I mean, I think we could go to the Board of Finance and ask them, right, for a current year transfer on that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of ways we could do that. You may recall, that when the Board of Finance made the recent decision to move the private duty fund balance into the capital reserve, that Amy was going to sort of keep a tally of what those private duty funds were. Because again, we know that we have so many police needs that are recurring. You saw the full 6-year CNR plan, right? There are a lot of needs there, and we just really couldn't see or justify using those funds on anything other than police needs. That being said, we could, with what is in the capital reserve, make essentially that acquisition with funds that were transferred there from the private duty fund. I think we would be able to do that, and Amy confirmed that we would be able to afford that.
Like that.
Okay.
So it wouldn't impact the mill rate. We're pulling the money from elsewhere. We get the savings, although it looks like we would get the savings if we waited a year.
I'm not convinced that's true from what I understand.
Well, that's what I thought. That's why
I thought it was the carrot is to actual transact and purchase and pay for to the
Now.
vendor in 2021.
Yeah, okay.
What month it occurs, I don't think that matters. So it's to 2021.
Yeah. So if that's if we save the money by buying it this year, I'm sticking with that.
It's a good idea, Wendy.
Thank you.
So what would this look like? Would this be a recommendation to the Board of Finance?
Yeah, so we would, if you wanted to, we could add it below the police admin vehicles and under, we would be adding it with the capital reserve column.
Yeah.
And we would add the $65,000 to the capital reserve column. And then just in terms of ordering, that project would show up where you're seeing like Simsbury Farms playscape replacement, the rotary mower, the irrigation replacement for Memorial Field. It would be showing up with that group of projects. And it would be the same funding source, which would be the capital reserve. But again, sort of those capital reserve dollars that had directly come from the private duty fund.
I advocated about these against sort of counting on these things kind of going forward, but I believe public safety is something that the federal money can be used towards, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is that not we could make the recommendation that you all are talking about right now, but put that as a placeholder, as a possible use, as a secondary concept as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a great.
I think that would be money well used. That money that's coming to us is all of ours to a certain extent. I think that would be money well used, directed.
Yeah, so the session that Amy and I sat in a few days ago, or maybe, gosh, it was just yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm losing track of my days. It was just yesterday. They did seem to indicate that similar to the second round of stimulus funding, that we would be able to use some of those funds to offset public safety salaries. So if that's the case, there's a good possibility we would have some operating budget savings for the current year. So is that a possibility, to perhaps purchase it at year end with, operating budget savings from the police department, possibly. Amy, in terms of the mechanics of making transfers and such to be in compliance with how they did it with the second round, would that work?
Yes, I'm just hesitant to make that a plan when we haven't received official guidance on what the stipulations are going to be.
Yeah.
I know that we were allowed to offset police salaries with this most recent one. I mean, there's a big difference between the money that we just got and $1 million that's coming. And I can't imagine that they're going to allow that for every single town and just pocket the savings, if you will.
Right. Wow.
I mean, irrespective of the secondary funding source, I mean, I think Wendy makes a good argument. We have the 65,000 in the capital reserve fund to cover this expenditure today, right, Maria?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
we would not be changing the mill rate as a result of this, and it's a need, and it saves us, as Wendy articulated, 30 grand. So for today's purposes, I think we include it in the capital reserve fund, and once we get the money and we understand it, and philosophically we have a discussion on where and how and when we should spend the COVID money. And again, I've got some strong feelings on the moral responsibility that comes with that. Mm-hmm. I think we can decide that extracurricular of this budgetary discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I agree, Sean.
Eric, is the chief on still?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Oh, sorry, Chief. You were like,
okay.
I caught you. Sorry. Hey, I'm behind this, and thanks, Wendy, for pushing. I did some Google. I got on the Google machine earlier today, and I was looking at different training tools. Simply, I'm going to face value. The most integrity. I'm sure you looked at the 10 systems or 20 vendors that are out there, and this one came to the top, right? Clearly, you vetted them all.
Yeah, this one is slightly different than all of the other ones. Yeah, there's a lot of interaction with this one that the other ones do not have.
That's what I want to hear. I just want to make sure we weren't getting the 30,000 because, there was something.
No, it's because they're calling it a first in Connecticut.
Yep, I get that. That's good sales. I'm going to use that in my own business going forward.
There you go.
I got to remember that. I'm going to put that in my next marketing piece.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
Hey.
Chief.
Jackie?
I have a question on a totally different item. If everybody's okay with this.
Jackie, before we go there, I just want to make sure we have consensus that we're adding this under capital reserve, and we're going to have a conversation with the Board of Finance.
If Wendy made a motion, I'll second it.
No, I don't think if we're good, I think we may be good.
Okay.
Jackie,
I'm good.
please, take it away.
So just two questions, and please forgive me. I'm just looking at the funding sources that we're talking about. For the traffic calming, can that go under town aid road?
Tom, what do you think? And Amy, do you think that would be a stretch?
I think the challenge we've had is Town Aid Road used to be very narrowly focused just on equipment needs, and over the last several years, we in some ways we're kind of a victim of our own frugality, and we saved money, and the fund got bigger and bigger, and we started using it to offset some of the roadway paving the last couple of years. And even this year, we had to have equipment cut that we were hoping to have and we had scheduled to have replaced this year. So it may or may not be able to be funded under Town Aid Road, but if we fund it under Town Aid Road, something else is going to have to slip.
Okay. I wasn't looking for something else to be cut. That was not my, as you guys can see, I'm trying to free up cash.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I think it's fair. It's, you know, however we can try to make everything work. It's just,
Right. Yeah, thanks, Tom. I didn't know that. And my second question then is the clubhouse repairs. Is that something that can go under the golf course fund?
Yeah, so it's for equipment, is my understanding, the
Only,
way that
okay.
that special revenue fund was set up. So for example, like the rake, am I using the right term, Tom? The rake and like the utility vehicle, that's equipment for the golf course. But I think that's how the surcharge was structured when it was set up.
That's correct.
Okay. Just trying to cover all the bases here.
Yep. I think that's good, Jackie.
Thanks, Wendy.
Okay.
So sorry, Eric.
No, Jackie.
Could any of these things, I guess, the admin vehicles or traffic calming or clubhouse repairs also be covered by the reserve? Love that I'm making everybody think.
I mean, in theory, it could. It's just then going to, you know, the more we dip into the reserve, right, the less we're going to have in future years when, you know, debt service is higher.
Well,
It's a potato and potato argument, right? In that it's the 110 is not coming, it's not going against the mill rate.
Right.
So you can cut that line item, Jackie, and you can transfer it to something else if you want to get more in. But if these are the 6 or 7 projects we want to do, then it doesn't technically matter whether it's capital or reserve or cash, because neither impact the mill rate, I guess is what I'm saying.
I thought you said the one.
Yeah, I missed that. I thought it did.
Yeah, that's
No.
what I thought too.
It would reduce it, but again, this was level funding, so this was already within what was built in with the mill rate.
Yeah.
How much would it reduce it by, just to humor Jackie?
Yeah, it was point, when Amy ran the calculations for us, it was 0.045 mils. And it worked out to 83 cents a month or less than $10 a year for a typical home.
Okay.
So from where we are right now, I think we were at $55 a mil increase.
Yeah. So this would bring it down
to about 45 or 46.
That would be what I would be looking to do. I mean, we've already pitched an increase on the operating side, I guess. Go ahead,
So
Sean. I know.
No, you're right. It's temporary though, right, Amy? Because next year when the debt service goes up even further, or am I not thinking about this correctly?
No, so the debt service, actually, I don't know if that, hold on. So so then in fiscal year 23, the debt service goes up. So when we're doing this budget again next year, it goes away anyways, but
It's there because it's consistent from a prior year in terms of what cash capacity is left under the debt service concept. So the Board of Finance, I guess what we're saying is I don't want to recommend to the Board of Finance we lower the debt service because it's temporary. And again, it's $10, but it goes up by those $10 next year.
So the proposed increase to the mill rate this year would be roughly where we were with the mill rate this time last year before we cut taxes by roughly $50. Is that correct?
I have to go back and look, but probably about that.
I think we just have to be aware, again, like I said days ago, you know, we do still have people unemployed. I know you know this, Eric, you know, and you're nodding.
Yeah.
And we do still have businesses that have asked for tax waivers. I'm just trying to be really aware of that. And I know we're all trying to get in what we can and keep services level, but you know, we have decided to purchase $2.5 million, worth of land. And yet we can't, now we're pushing the mill rate up, but we're saying it's not because of that. So I think we need to look at what we can do for savings.
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, one thing, Jackie, just like if you were to take let's say the clubhouse repairs, just what I'm pulling out, you could swap it with something in column 1, correct? Like if you decided not to do the parks maintenance, the playscapes.
Yep.
That would take, right? We haven't prioritized where we have, I guess.
No, we haven't talked about those items, and that's a good idea.
But just saying, those are the kind of things, I think those would be the decisions we'd have to make if we didn't pull this from reserves and we wanted to lower the mill rate by $10. We'd have to swap out something in column 1.
I guess philosophically, guys, what's our goal here? Because we all we're going to vote on a operating budget that drives the mill rate up a little bit. And it seems like if we're trying to get the mill rate flat, these 3 items aren't the place to spend an hour. It's the operating budget if we have a different goal.
So what can we change in that?
We can zero these out. That's fine. But we added a bunch of stuff that drove the mill rate up. Maria's budget originally, I believe, would not have resulted or would have resulted in less of a tax increase than what we just all agreed to.
Yeah, just a small difference. So my original proposed budget would have resulted in a 0.17 mil increase, or about $36 a year. We then got some updated debt service numbers, so that went to 0.2 mils, or about $42 a year. With the additions that you all made, it only added about 0.06 mils, and brought it up to $55. And I believe we landed at 0.67. So it's probably a difference with what you added is about a 0.06 mil difference, or about, looks like $13 or so a year.
So our changes, the additions we made, is about $1 a month.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the pensions too, when you did the pensions weren't originally included in the 3642, but then we found a way to, based on the actuary, to make it not hit by changing those assumptions, but otherwise by not including those, we would have really gone up quite a bit.
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm comfortable sending the budget as we've discussed to the Board of Finance.
So do we vote on the budget or do we?
So what's going to happen once we're okay with it and staff doesn't have any other questions is they're going to put together a whole set of very formal motions, which we could either do tonight or it sounds like on Friday, and I could see what the preference is.
Tonight.
Okay.
I'd rather wait. I feel like I haven't really looked at this in totality because some of this just came up tonight. That would be my preference, but I'll go with the rest of the board's decision.
I'd like to get it done tonight. I think we can do this. And while my preference would have been to have a flat budget, I don't think that's realistic to keep our services where we want them to be for the citizens. So this is a very modest increase and it's not wild and crazy. So I would be supportive of that.
I'm with Mike. But I'll give you, I will not force on to any of my teammates here to vote on it tonight. If you need the extra time, if you need the extra time, that's yours to ask for. But I'm ready to do it tonight.
Chris, I guess I'm just looking at, like you had brought up the other day, this is not just $50 or $55 for somebody who doesn't have the median home.
That's right.
It's so we have to be very aware of that and of all of our residents. And again, we've got people who are out of work. We're not fully out of this, I wish we were. And I feel like we're making, a very big decision on behalf of people who may not be able to afford it.
Right.
I don't think Jackie, that's not lost on me, but guys, remember we have unemployment every year. I mean, and Simsbury has, from an economic standpoint, 0 unemployment. I know that's not actually true in terms of the numbers. We have 635 people, But from an economic standpoint, I believe anything under than a couple of points, right, Amy, is considered zero or non-existent. So, this year is not unique. I mean, COVID makes it feel unique, but it's not any different than any other. We always have folks unemployed, and that is part of our deliberation, and that's why we try to make sure we manage this budget as best we can. And I'm not trying to be insensitive to that. I'm very much aware of it. It hurts. Any increase hurts anybody. It hurts the fixed income seniors. It hurts the folks that are unemployed. It hurts the folks that are working two jobs. But the reality is we also have an expectation to maintain a high level of service in this community, and that it does cost money. And I'll walk away from this knowing that, I mean, we've beaten this thing up for 16 hours, guys. Just again, that's a good thing, right?
You're right.
No one can accuse you, Jackie, or Wendy, or me, or anybody of not doing their due diligence here, right? We've had some really deep, challenging conversations and different philosophical debates on what we prioritize, and that's what we're supposed to do, guys. At the end of the day, that's why I kind of pushed. If we're driving towards zero, then we need to go back and look at operating. But if we're comfortable in the realm of $30 to $50 on the median home, then I think we're pretty much home, because again, the Board of Finance is inevitably going to ask us to go back and look at something here. And I'm not saying that I'm looking forward to that conversation, but again, this budget, I think, funds the town's needs, respects what staff and Maria has recommended as the priorities. And goes hard on some other things that we wanted to look at the end of the day. So,
John, I also think, I don't know that there's some stuff that we don't have consensus on, correct?
Yep.
Which is unique, because this team usually, for as long as, I've been had the opportunity and the pleasure to serve, we've been in lockstep. What's not, I would say about that, while we don't have consensus on stuff, they're not because out of the lack of belief of need or credibility. It's just ordering of priorities for some of us, and which is different than philosophically about whether they have value or not, and this is different. But I think that I'm not making a point well, is that I don't think we have consensus on some things, but what's probably there is consensus on, if the vote certainly went in certain directions, it still would have resulted in a mill rate increase. We weren't going to not get to a mill rate increase if each of our individual priorities of the values had been met. So,
agree.
One thing, Sean, I just want to on the so my number was like $50. So we're in that kind of that ballpark. But there are people, you're saying there's not a lot of unemployment here and things like that. But the perception that, we're bumping up the taxes this year, when a lot of us have heard from residents, don't increase taxes. And, we're adding nice to haves to the budget. Whether it doesn't hit this year or not, people are going to say, you're buying Meadowood and you're buying Latimer Lane, and I have to pay another $50 this year as a senior. So it impacts people differently. So you have to look at the whole thing. You can't just say it doesn't impact everybody.
I agree, but we have an obligation to explain that statement is not actually true, right? That the $50 isn't because of Meadowood or because of Latimer.
As a normal person in the town, I would not know that. Okay. I would see. So most people don't know that. So you're just saying, this is what you're getting for your $50. You might not get it till next year, or it might not hit your bill till next year, but I'm still paying $50. And these are the decisions that was made today.
Yeah. And Wendy, and I think you've heard me say it in private, just you and I having coffee, so to speak, or the Board of Finance meetings, or whichever, one of the things that we started with Maria, and maybe this is not true, Sean, you can, or Mike, but we need to do a better job of marketing. And what I mean by marketing is we need to do a better job of communicating. So Matt, like I asked Matt, Superintendent Curtis, to say, okay, for your piece, I believe you, man, but for the folks that don't have kids in town or Latimer, they don't know what that means. So let's give people something. We started with the budget document, but more of that stuff has to go out. And I know we've strapped resources. We don't have creative people, but that's the way that we're able to, because I'm a visualist, and that's what would help me. And I think these meetings, nobody listen to these meetings. Who wants to listen to me right now?
I agree, Chris, but again, this is my soapbox every year, right? Everybody hates their tax bill when it comes in August, but nobody gives a damn about the budget hearings when we sit here and actually make these decisions. And again, I listen to folks in the grocery store too, and I'll be honest, my first response is, did you even vote in the referendum? And most of the time the answer is no, or they look at me like they don't know what a referendum is. Or B, they didn't comment at the budget. And again, I know people are busy. But this is $100 million budget that impacts how much in taxes you pay on your car and your house. And it's important enough to tune into for 30 seconds to give your opinion. And, people need to engage in the process. And again, the budget, it is 900 people that vote for it, and it passes 60-40. And it will pass 60-40 or 61-39 this year. Like it traditionally does. We've had 1 year out of 25, I think, where the budget's gone down. And that's part of the challenge here. And you can take that as nobody cares, or you can take it as we're doing a good job, because people hate paying a penny more, but at the end of the day, we're not driving people out of town because of taxes. And it's hard. And Wendy, I'm not saying there's no unemployment, but the actual number, I believe, is, Maria, right, was 635 or something like that from that we had from the DOL statistics not too long ago.
Yeah, it was from January, and I can double check real quick on those too.
It was like 654 in the January report,
so
but you're right.
Again, it's not zero, but it's and it's not an inconsequential number.
But just one more thing, there wasn't the Alice level. I'm not sure if that was from Lisa and the Board of Finance, or somebody has brought that up, that people are just getting by. What they make is what they spend. In this town, I thought the number was 20%. You could shoot me. I might be wrong on that. So
you might be right.
It's in the 20s.
Yeah. Okay.
You're right.
So, Eric, if we're going to wrap this up, and if we maybe have the potential to vote on it, Maria, do you think there's any chance with the possible federal money that we might receive, would any of that be able to go toward alleviating some pressure of this? I know that's a huge ask.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That's a great question. We heard a couple of things that we would not be able to use the money for. And one was we cannot use it for tax relief. We also heard that we will not be able to use it to apply towards any pension obligations. So I'm just going to double check, because those were two of the hard no's that people asked questions about, and they said, no, you won't be able to do that. I'm just going to double check real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, those are the primary ones that we heard no to. Yeah. A few things we did hear, in addition to possible offsets, in addition to the salary savings, is that we might be able to use it as an offset if we can demonstrate a specific revenue loss due to the pandemic. Unfortunately, our tax revenues remain stable. So, maybe could we try to say that interest income was impacted and maybe use it as an offset there? But there's more to come on that.
Yeah, I think there could be opportunities with this money to not use it for broad mill rate relief, since most of our residents are not struggling, luckily, but use it in a more targeted fashion to really make sure we're helping those businesses and individuals that are adversely impacted.
Thank you.
That's what we should
do. So I'm hearing, I think, general consensus that we move forward tonight, and I wanted to ask staff, is there any clarification you'd need from us before we take a break for you to put the motions together?
I'm good.
Okay. Would it make sense for us to go on mute and go dark for some period of time?
What are you going to ballpark that time at?
Where are you going?
Well,
he's trying to drive.
9.67 minutes. You got time to run a mile, buddy.
I'm trying to get clear Route 10. I'm trying to come from Bloomfield to Longview Drive. Can I do it?
The chief is on this call.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
There's no officer on patrol because he voted.
I was waiting for you to pick that up. Okay. All right.
I don't know, Amy, Melissa, what do you guys think? At least 15 minutes, probably.
Yeah, why don't we come back at 9 o'clock? That's 17 minutes. And if you need a little more time, we
I
can do
can
it.
get home.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Luke.
Hi.
Wow, you're fast, Chris.
Mike, that was not my top time, but I get it. I got home. I caught a little AC/DC on the radio, put a little extra pep in my step.
Go with what gets you there.
Sorry, Chief.
We had a new officer off on Bushy Hill, just watching.
Hey, Mike, you know what it's like to be late for a tea time. You got to make up,
Yeah, you almost ran me over when I was running. No, I'm just kidding.
That was merely encouraging you along the way.
I felt encouraged.
Are you, Jackie, are you at your office? I saw your truck outside the building as I blew by. Yeah, I beeped. If you heard me beep, I beeped.
At least he can get a personal escort.
Yeah, right.
That's what I was thinking.
Hey.
Is the ankle monitor still working?
Hey, Chief.
Gotta hit
I
those
gotta
low
get home and eat,
speeds.
man. I'm gonna pass out. So
You may have to ask for another appropriation for some ankle bracelets or something.
Nice. Good call.
Lord.
Do we have Melissa, Amy, Maria?
Please corral us.
No, apparently no.
No,
Yes,
we do have budget motions, though.
We
It's okay.
do.
Emotion.
Okay, we're good.
Melissa and Amy worked their fantastic magic and did a great job. So thank you.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
right.
Sean, would you like to do the honors?
I would be honored to do the honors. All right, so I move effective March 10th, 2021 to approve the Board of Selectmen 2021-2022 operating budget in the amount of $24,887,734 to include the following changes from the town manager's proposed budget. A $36,383 decrease for pension, a $96,982 increase for parks technician position, $22,000 increase for the Spirit Council, $2,000 increase for Meals on Wheels, a $2,500 increase for Parks Professional Development, $8,000 increase for library materials, $55,603 increase for temporary assessor's position, and $8,612 increase for police de-escalation training.
I will second that. Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
So I move effective March 10th, 2021 to approve the Water Pollution Control 2021-22 budget, 2022 operating budget in the amount of $5,374,005, including the Avon and Granby Clean Water Fund share. Yep, that's the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes.
All right, move effective March 10, 2021 to approve the residential, I believe it's rental property, 2021-22 operating budget in the amount of $48,522.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
All right. I move effective March 10th, 2021 to approve the Simsbury Parks and Recreation Fund 2021-22 operating budget in the amount of $2,159,666.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries.
All right. I move March 10th, 2021 to approve the debt service 2021-22 operating budget in the amount of $6,270,881.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
I move effective March 10th, 2021 to approve the capital and non-recurring plan for the 2021-2022 in the amount of $1,868,758, including $16,250 to be funded by the general fund via the 5-year payback method, $449,008 to be funded by general fund, $51,200 to be funded by federal or state grants, $373,500 to be funded by the Town Aid Road Fund, $95,000 to be funded by the Sewer Use Fund, $379,000 to be funded by the Capital Reserve Fund, $25,000 to be funded by anticipated trade-in value, $27,000 for the project savings, or from project savings, $12,800 from the Dollar Ride Fund, and $40,000 from the Golf Equipment Fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank God.
Oh, I have one question. Can I ask a question before you adjourn?
Oh, no, we got more. Sorry.
We're
not done yet. We got a lot more.
I thought there was
Sean.
Gone.
I thought we were done. All right. I move effective March 10th, 2021. To add the following new projects to the capital improvement plan for the 2021-22 year in accordance with Charter Section 803B, the Meadowwood acquisition, $2,515,860, the North End sidewalk construction, $810,000, sewer lining, $600,000, and the berm improvements for $3,250,000.
Second that.
I think I heard Chris get in there. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
I move effective March 10th, 2021 to approve the capital improvement program to include the following projects in the 2020-21 year with the total funding of $48,123,266 for 2021-2022. The projects are as follows: the Meadowwood acquisition, $2,515,860, recommended funding bonds and cash. Performing Arts Center parking and accessibility improvements, $700,000, bonds and grants. Highway pavement management, $1,205,000, bonds, cash and grants. Sidewalk reconstruction, $200,000, bonds. North End sidewalk construction, $810,000, grants. Sewer lining, $600,000, the sewer use fund. Berm improvements, $3,250,000, sewer use fund and grants. Woodland Street, Hot Meadow Street sewer upgrade, $1,200,000, the sewer assessment fund. District security improvements, $250,000 bonds. The Simsbury High School stadium bleachers and press box replacement, $600,000 bonds. And the Latimer Lane renovation for $36,792,406, bonds and grants.
I'll second that.
Okay.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries.
And then I move effective March 10th, 2021 to refer the following capital projects to the Planning Commission in accordance with CGS Section 8-24, the Meadowwood acquisition, the Performing Arts Center parking and accessibility improvements, highway paving management, sidewalk reconstruction, North End sidewalk construction, sewer lining, berm improvements, Woodland Street, Hot Meadow Street sewer upgrade, the district security improvements, the Simsbury High School stadium bleachers and press box replacement, and the Latimer Lane renovation.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And that motion carries.
I'm very sorry, but the debt service number, we have to redo that one. I apologize. That one was slightly off on the document. So, Amy, if you could just read aloud to me the right number for debt service and we can redo that.
That did seem low.
Sean, we were going to blame you.
I know.
Okay.
I was like, wait a minute, we got $700,000 in cash then.
Is 6 million.
Wait till we adjourn and do it.
Hold on, we'll let him read it.
6,549,357.
657?
357. You got it.
All right. So I think technically, so Eric, I moved that we retract the approval for the debt service 2021 operating budget that was previously approved.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I move that effective March 10th, 2021, we approve the debt service 2021-22 operating budget in the amount of $6,549,357.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Listen, I know it's a long meeting, and before we adjourn, I wanted to make sure that we thank our incredible staff, the town manager's office, and all of our department heads, and all who were part of building this budget, including our friends at the Board of Education. Appreciate you being on this call with us. And this is our fourth budget under this new form of government, and I think our community is incredibly well served by the professionals who serve our town. And I just wanted to share that with you tonight.
Hey, Eric, if I could just say really quickly, and I don't want to belabor the meeting any longer, just wanted to say thank you very much for the support on Latimer Lane. I know you guys have been wrestling with this as much as we are, so just didn't want this meeting to close out with us expressing our incredible gratitude for everybody on this board.
Thanks, Jeff. It's a partnership.
Thanks. Thank you.
You got it, Jeff.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that.